Drizzle out, warm and sunny ahead of this. Further showers and rain pushing across Northern Ireland and Scotland, rather fresh here. And temperatures in that sunshine in the southeast reaching around 28, 29 Celsius. Settling down by the end of the week, temperatures a little lower. See you soon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The Prime Minister vows to bring trust back to politics.
That's despite the growing cronyism row engulfing Downing Street.
As Sir Keir Starmer is set to give his first major speech later today, ahead of Parliament's return next week.
definitely maybe, the rumour mill rife that Oasis are set to reform and announce a tour today, all to be revealed at 8 a.m.
Tributes for former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who died yesterday at the age of 76.
Yeah, they've been coming in from Prince William to David Beckham, who said thank you for always being the person you've always been. Passionate, caring, calm and a true gentleman. And the England defender who has given every one of his 19 caps under Sven, Danny Mills, joins us shortly.
As Prince Edward's daughter puts her hand up for military service, we'll be debating this morning whether all royals should be forced to spend time in the armed services.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag, tuppence.
Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. Today marks 60 years since the film premiered, and we want to hear your favourite memories.
Good morning. It's a wet start for some of us this morning, but for others, it's going to feel much more like summer today. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
1 minute past 6 o'clock. A very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast.
I can remember going to the cinema to see Mary Poppins, and lovely film, except I fell asleep when she began to sing, or that old doll began
Early
to
each
sing
day on the steps of St Paul's, the little old bird wouldn't come.
Tuppence a bag.
Yeah. Every time I walk, I can't believe you fell asleep. That's one of the.
Well, that's
one of the bits that would get me teary.
That was really.
Yeah. Okay, really, for some reason, Mary Poppins makes me emotional. When they start flying the kites at the end as well, I start getting a little bit.
Go fly.
Because I'll start. I will. I feel it coming on. But no, what a lovely film. I absolutely love
Julie
Mary
Andrews
Poppins.
is just perfect, isn't she?
She's practically perfect in every way, is what she is.
Such good casting, and yeah, she was fab. I loved her in Sound of Music as well.
David Tomlinson.
Yes.
David Tomlinson, who was the father, and the two children. Honestly, what a lovely film.
Lovely film.
Lovely film.
What a lovely stuff.
Happy birthday, Mary Poppins.
If you've any memories of it, I remember falling asleep during it.
That's so unfortunate.
I was 5 at the time, but a lovely film, lovely film. And if you have any memories, or you want to commemorate it in any way, or pay tribute to Julie Andrews or Dick Van Dyke, let us know.
Oh, I can tell you, we'll do that later, but the whole story about the accent as well, the Dick Van Dyke English accent.
But...
Yeah, because his argument was always the fact that there was a speech specialist that was teaching him a Cockney accent who was actually not English and was teaching him what they thought was a Cockney accent. Yeah. So that was his argument, was the fact, it wasn't me, Mary Poppins. He's the worst Cockney accent ever done in history, bless him. Who's still alive at 98.
Is he?
He is, and still working. Still
walking around with a tambourine attached to his elbow or something. Fab film.
Right, let's get the news underway. We begin with politics. The Prime Minister will have a big speech today in which he'll pledge to bring trust back ahead of that speech to the nation later this morning.
Yeah, this has been heavily trailed now for several days, with Sir Keir Starmer laying the groundwork for the speech, warning things will get worse before they get better, and next week's return to Parliament will not be business as usual.
Now, this all comes as the Prime Minister faces pressure over accusations of cronyism. We talked about this yesterday. Conservatives now demanding an investigation into recent civil service appointments, but isn't that what they all do? Political correspondent of The Spectator, James Heal, to discuss his thoughts on all of this. This just gets me what all this moaning and groaning is about. They've got an administration, they fill it with their people and the people who influence them. What is the big deal about all of this?
I think there's two big issues, Eamonn. One of which is, of course, Labour spent years warning about the politicisation of the civil service under the Conservatives. Then, of course, they first get in and they do all this. People being brought in for political reasons rather than actually because they're following due process. And I think the second thing, of course, is are they being transparent and honest about that process? And then a lot of these kind of appointments have been revealed via unconventional means rather than the government being honest about it. And now you've got sort of Conservatives pointing the finger at ministers saying that when, for instance, they put down written questions in Parliament, answers have not been forthcoming on that. So I think there's the thing about transparency and the element about hypocrisy as well, and due process too.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's chosen to do it this morning in the Rose Garden, which, as he's written in the Times this morning, was the seat of where many of these parties were during COVID, and of course that famous press conference trying to justify the eye test at Barnard Castle, none of us will ever forget. But will that land, you know, this idea that, look, we're the squeaky clean guys, those guys were the corrupt ones, when there is all this debate about cronyism at the moment?
I think that obviously that Labour will get a bounce by being a virtue of new government. They've had 14 years in opposition, so they do get that kind of sense of the benefit of the doubt among the British public. But equally, I do think that they need to act fast. You know, they've been in government now for 50 days. You've got conference season coming up. What we're seeing right now is a battle to try and determine the public mood and all of this as they go into the autumn. And the big thing is going to be about the economic inheritance that Labour had, and also about standards in public life.
It's interesting because we're being told sort of laying the ground for tax rises come the autumn. We were told all this stuff about no, taxes on working people, and yet that's actually not true, is it? And this idea of putting trust back into politics, when actually it was quite clear, the IFS said this before the election, they're not doing anything about the tax thresholds. Everybody, including working people, will, by virtue of that, be paying more tax.
Absolutely, and I think it was always slightly dishonest and disingenuous to pretend they weren't, and I think in fairness, they would have gone up under the Conservatives as well. Right now, Labour, they're stuck with the bill. And I think a lot of Labour MPs are actually getting to grips with what governing means. It's a hard business, and you have to make difficult choices and compromises.
Yeah. But they didn't make the difficult choices, you see. I thought, James, they had a chance to hit firms that did very well out of the bad situations of the last 2 or 3 years. The supermarkets, for instance, the utility companies, they shied away from all of this. And then they're sort of making the rest of us think, well, no, we said you weren't going to pay, but you're going to probably have to pay something. Why don't they just hit the big boys?
Well, I think they're going to try and do that. The key thing, of course, the big boys tend to be fairly well-financed and have the armoury, the tools in their armoury to try and stop that. I think the key thing, of course, is also about public spending, what they choose to spend their money on. I think right now a lot of people are quite annoyed about the fact that, for instance, they take away winter fuel allowance at the same time as giving sort of 15.5% pay rises to the trade unions and 22% pay rises to the junior doctors. So I think politics is about juxtaposition. They're very able to talk the language of national renewal and everyone in this together. The key thing is whether they choose to act on that in terms of what they choose to spend their money on. And as you say, Eamonn, going after the big boys as well.
James, why are they worried about what debt we have? Why don't they just keep paying the interest on the debt and get on with what they're supposed to do, which is run the country?
Well, because over the past 15 years or so, we had a period of historically low interest rates, so it was quite cheap to borrow. Then, of course, in about 2022 onwards, we had the interest rates go up, therefore the borrowing costs go up with it. So I think the danger is that if you carry on borrowing at the current rate, when you've got interest rates fairly high by the last 10-year standards, that adds into all our debts and taxpayer costs.
And just finally, on this point that Eamonn was making, we've been talking about this bloomin' speech now for several days. We've been briefed on Saturday, it was in the political shows on Sunday, Bank Holiday Monday, and all the papers. I feel like we've heard this speech already several times over. Why do you think they've done that? And will that actually mean that all the bad stuff's out of the way? Or do you think they're rewriting certain segments of it based on, sort of almost using us as a sort of focus group, a national focus group?
I think it's much more about filling a grid in August, really, and trying to set the agenda. And after a few days when there's about cronyism and sort of glasses for passes and all of that, it's a chance for Labour to get on the front foot once again.
OK. James.
James, thank you very much indeed. James Hill there, political correspondent for The Spectator. And we'll be talking to James later again in the programme. If you've got a view, you know what to do. Have your say, and there's how you do it.
Right, the countdown is officially on. The Britpop group Oasis, who split in 2009, are, we think, set to make a big announcement at 8 o'clock this morning. You can see we've got our clock on the screen there with the countdown for you.
This is a bit like Keir Starmer making his speech today, given 3 days notice on this. Stephanie Tetchy joins us in the studio now to give us her take on this. Why do we really care? Why are we sort of ticking down to 8 o'clock this morning?
Eamonn, because Oasis fans have been in mourning since the brothers split in 2009. It's been 15 years in the making for this reunion. And I think when it comes to Oasis, for many years, the press have been speculating, are they going to get back together or not? And this has literally come out of the blue. And it looks like these are finally two brothers who are no longer looking back in anger. Maybe people are saying it's due to the money because, look, if they actually do put on this reunion tour, they're set to make £430 million, maybe £50 million each a piece, but they will make history. I think, you know, they may not be the best of friends on stage, but the music speaks for itself.
I heard that prior to this announcement and the publicity pictures and things being taken for this a couple of weeks ago, they hadn't met up. They hadn't talked anything.
No.
They first met while having publicity pictures taken.
Well, you know what, Eamonn, it's mostly been their managers who've been trying to negotiate this deal for them. That's why a lot of fans are saying this is purely a money deal. Liam has just gone through a divorce where he had to fork out apparently £23 million, and they seem much stronger together. Noel is the music behind the brains, but when it comes to Liam, he's the one that rocks on stage.
Interesting. It's funny because a lot of people talk about the Swiftie mania that has just swept through the UK. I think she did 8 Wembley dates. There was speculation that Oasis could get 10.
That's the thing.
And then they could be headline at Glastonbury. It feels like everything on a silver platter for these boys. As someone that lived through the 90s and, you know, I know every word to every song, I genuinely am excited to hear about this.
And I think a lot of music fans are. I think we're very much in this era now when it comes to bands. We like bands reuniting. I think there's always that story and nostalgia. I was just about to say that. It's that sense of nostalgia that works for people, which people want to see, because I think these days when music is very manufactured, and as I said, Oasis have the catalogue of music to their name. So if this tour does actually go ahead, it's going to be a massive one. Like Taylor done 8 dates at Wembley, they will set to be doing 10, and then also they'll be doing at Etihad Arena in Manchester as well. So I think it will definitely be what a lot of music people are waiting to see, but it's all about the connection between the two brothers as well.
Yeah, you see, Liam has been touring on his own.
Yes,
and
he has.
I know people who have gone to see him and they think he's great and whatever it is. So that was Noel doing that, but does Liam do anything?
So Liam's been touring because obviously Liam's got the voice. So Liam, during his tours, he's been singing all of the old Oasis hits, where Noel's tried to stay away from that because he was the one that actually left the band. So I think this is what will be interesting, actually seeing Noel actually getting back to his Oasis era.
And heck, if they do sell out Wembley with this huge number of gigs and then fall out spectacularly and refuse to go on, I mean, they could end up making a loss, couldn't they? They can't afford to do this if they're not going to get on.
Well, I think they're older now. Maybe they're older and wiser, where they know we're not going to be the best of friends, but we can make this work as a business. And music has this power to unite people. And I think once they see that there's this big, you know, yearning for them to get back together, I think once they do get back on stage, they will be able to put on a good performance. But I think their mother, Peggy, will be happy more than anything. I think for years she's wanted to see them back together. So I think the music they make is magic, and I think they've got that support. So I think it will actually go down in history as one of the greatest comebacks.
Talking about going down in history, we're celebrating 60 years since Mary Poppins was released.
And it made $135 million worldwide. It was one of Disney's highest grossing films that year, and it definitely set Julie Andrews on the map as well. I think since Mary Poppins, it's one of those things where it can span so many generations. I think from the book where it was, they really brought it live to a musical. And I think it's one of those films that will stand the test of time. Julie Andrews tried to shed off being typecasted for it, but it's something that's never left her all her career.
Thank you very much.
I'm still not ready for her to walk away from that role. She'll always be Mary Poppins to me.
She definitely brought the magic on screen for it.
Thank you, Steph.
Thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate it. So, 8 o'clock, we're on the countdown to the Oasis announcement.
Right, the time's 6:13. Let's have a look now at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom.
Notting Hill Carnival is wrapped up for another year. 5 people stabbed, 230 arrested. That was just yesterday, on the closing day. It comes after 3 people were stabbed on Sunday, including a 32-year-old mother who's in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted. 90 arrests were made on the first day of the event.
Residents of an East London block of flats engulfed by what they call a nightmare fire say they've lost everything. Everyone has been accounted for and no injuries were reported after a major incident was declared following that fire in Dagenham. More than 100 people were evacuated from the building, with 2 being taken to hospital.
From today, the NHS 111 helpline will now offer mental health support to adults and children in crisis. Local health systems previously had their own separate phone lines, which took about 200,000 calls a month. It makes the NHS in England one of the first countries to offer such a support service for mental health issues as well as for physical problems. What nonsense that mental health phone call, that phone line is. They're not increasing the service. They're actually just saying the service is available now on 111. There is no service available. You know anybody who's seeking mental health support and it just is not there. So why are they trying to bluff everybody and thinking suddenly it's all right? You phone 111 and you'll be taken care of. You will not be taken care of.
Whenever I've called 111, they always just say, you need to go and see a doctor.
Yeah.
Because they're covering themselves and always a bit worried. But if maybe it's just having someone on the end of a phone, if someone's in a crisis, a bit like with the Samaritans, maybe this could be the thing that could help. Who knows?
No, but it's not, Isabel. The point is people need help and they need a clinical appointment and they don't get it. And they'll say, right, you can have one in 3 months' time.
At the other end of the country.
5 months. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. We do not have the facilities. The whole service is not funded properly and no amount of spin on it is going to change that, I'm afraid. Let us know your views. Maybe we've had that experience of trying to get in touch.
Will the weather change, though, this week? Because we're being told there is a little mini heat wave back on its way. Here's Craig Snell with all the details.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A bit of a north-south split across the UK today. Many northern areas seeing some rain, but largely dry and fine further south. So we can see this rainfall first thing this morning across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But for Northern Ireland, it will quickly clear here, so conditions improve as the day goes on. That rain just moving into Cumbria and Wales later on too. And that rain just quite heavy and persistent at times, so some fairly poor travelling conditions, especially across parts of southwestern Scotland. Ahead of it, dry and bright and increasingly warm, could see highs reaching around 25 or 26 degrees in the southeast. So moving into the evening, conditions improve for many parts of Scotland. Some late spells of sunshine around, maybe the odd shower. But for southwestern Scotland and Cumbria, that rain just persisting right throughout the evening. So again, a bit of a difficult commute home here. A few showers also for Northern Ireland, and that rain just beginning to fringe into southwestern England too as we end the day. But for the rest of England, it's a fine end with some late spells of sunshine. Into the evening, that weather front will just move a little bit further eastwards. It starts to weaken as it does so, but still some patchy rain on it as we move through the nighttime period. Either side of it, some clear skies, and for all of us, it's a fairly mild night. Towns and cities staying firmly above double figures. Into Wednesday morning, that area of cloud and patchy rain just really lingers across many central parts of the country. Behind it, another spell of rain moving in for Northern Ireland and Scotland. So after a little bit of a drier spell, turns wet, unfortunately, again here. But down towards the southeastern parts of England, remaining onto the dry and fine conditions and increasingly warm. Could see highs reaching around 28 to 29 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, it's time now for the Great British Giveaway, and it's a whopper. Your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Yes, it is a great giveaway. 30,000 quid. Lines close at 5 o'clock this Friday, and then we'll find out who the winner is, and it could be you.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right after the break, we'll be paying tribute to Sven-Göran Eriksson in the company of
Danny Mills, 19 caps for England, everyone under Sven-Göran Eriksson. All those great games, the Greece game with the David Beckham last-minute free kick and the West Germany game, he played in all of them. So
played in all of them.
He'll be with us.
OK, he'll have a few tales to tell, and we'll be discussing those with him right after this.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben, do you like baking?
Baking? Only flapjack.
Why flapjack?
It's just a childhood favourite. Otherwise, no, I don't have time to do anything, no.
Yeah.
No, do you?
I love baking.
Really?
Yeah, I find it really relaxing.
You never bring in any treats for me.
I know, I was thinking
Scones
that's going to
or
come next,
cakes?
isn't it? Scones.
Oh, it's my birthday next week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what to do?
I've
You're not
really
here,
dug
are
a
you?
hole for myself now, haven't I? No, I actually am here next week.
OK, well, you know what to do then.
OK. I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by JP from Bridget's Bakery.
BB is the brand, is the face, is the smile. She originated the motto, making London smile, so that's what we try to do on board of our lovely buses and in our shops.
Which is probably the most British thing you could imagine.
Yes, we try to do a 3-in-1. We try to really embrace all of the culture and history, so Roadmaster buses, 1970s. Oh, nice pictures. We have the food afternoon tea, 1700.
JP, is it scone or scone? And also, where does the word come from?
Ben.
Is it of French origin?
Ben, how very dare you asking me? Are you trying to actually put me under the spotlight? I would say, according to a Belgian person, it's scone.
Scone.
Exactly.
Oh, that's what
so I like to do a mix of both. But I would say...
Sorry, JP.
Common as muck. and another key question which many Brits get tangled up in is it the jam first or the cream first?
So, I'll tell you a very scientific fact I just made up on my way here this morning. The best way to eat your scone is, first step, you split it in 2 halves.
Yeah.
On one half, you do the cream and jam. The other half, the jam and cream.
Oh, no.
Then, if you feel like people looking at you, you should squash it together. And if really the tension is quite high, you should give your scone to the nearest person holding a chef jacket. There you go.
That sounds too diplomatic.
Yeah.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sven-Göran Eriksson over many of the front and back pages today. Paul's here to talk about him today.
You know, it's bizarre because it's almost that we are talking about and paying tribute to Sven-Göran Eriksson twice. Because, of course, we did this in January when it was announced that he had terminal cancer, and that's when so many tributes came in. And then, obviously, sadly, he passed away yesterday, and then, so we're doing the same thing again. And I kind of imagine for Sven, And I don't know whether this was why it was announced, but it's very rare that you get someone that can actually see the tributes. And I mean, we often talk about, we've spoken about that, haven't we, about funerals before. It's like, well, it would be nice to be there and to actually experience what everybody says about you, whereas Sven has actually been able to do that.
He had a chance to make a documentary. Or so between all this, and we're going to talk about what was in that. And we've got the footballer, the fullback, Danny Mills, who joins us this morning from Spain and who actually played under. Now, the thing about, you're going to tell us why Danny's situation was so special.
Well, I think Danny would probably be better doing it, but Danny, you know Sven better than anybody because, and I guess you owe him because he's the one that brought you into the England setup in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Huge amounts of gratitude for Sven. Obviously, all my England caps were under Sven. Plenty of times of in the squads and sat on the bench and being around it as well. And I just think, obviously, it's a very, very sad time for his family. You know, the way the last sort of 7-8 months has gone for him and his family must have been incredibly difficult, and our thoughts go out to him. But I just like the way that he's dealt with it, you know, more than anything else. He's been very, very positive. You know, don't be sad for me. You know, he's been very much like, look, you know, smile, get on with your life, you know, enjoy life while you can, because you never know what's going to happen. And I think, you know, that very sort of that calm positivity, you know, is what he always tried to bring to every football match that I played in.
Danny, there seems to be a tremendous fondness for the man himself. Was there a tough side to him? I mean, for a football manager to be liked, I'm sure is not everybody's remit to be liked, but he seems to be genuinely liked.
Yeah, I think he was very, very different to what we'd all experienced before. Very, very quietly spoken. You know, don't think he ever raised his voice, let alone shouted at anybody. His knowledge of the game was absolutely supreme. You know, he had huge respect in that way, and at that time, that made him incredibly different. You know, from a lot of managers, he was a thinker. I think, you know, that the most aggressive that he ever got was, you know, go out and kill them, and that was about it. You know, it wasn't at times the most inspiring sort of, you know, speeches, but you know, that was how he was. But I played before him at Manchester City as well. You know, spoke 5 or 6 languages fluently. You know, could speak to anybody, could hold, you know, could manage up, could manage down. Was just a really genuine guy, and even when he came to Man City, it had sort of more to do with him on the day-to-day basis. Was very respectful of the situation. I was coming back from a couple of broken legs. You know, he brought somebody else in, and he gave me the choice of whether I wanted to stay or whether I wanted to leave, and told me I wasn't going to play much. And again, that was quite different. You know, he was very, very open, very, very honest with players, and did it in a very, very calm way.
Was he someone that responded to pressure well? Because I get the impression that going back 20 years or so, Danny, there was almost more pressure on the England team than probably there's ever been, and even more so than today. You know, we look at Greece and that last-minute goal there from David Beckham, and then the pressure that was on going into the World Cup. How did he deal with that? Did he shield you all away from that?
No, he just did. Sven just did what he did, and I think, you know, you've seen him in some of these last few interviews. You know, even under, I guess, you know, the pressure that he was under, you know, coming towards the end of his life, all those things that he was having to deal with, even when his diagnosis first came out, and he said, look, you know, okay, it is what it is. We have to deal with it. We move on. You know, we're talking now about games of football. You know, he was incredibly calm and resilient, you know, and measured in dealing with, you know, his end-of-life diagnosis. He was no different when it came to football. You know, he was exactly the same. And he never really seemed to feel pressure at all. You know, he just kept the same demeanour throughout. Just said, look, we just keep doing the same things. You know, you're footballers. You know, this is the best job in the world. Go and do what you're good at. Go and enjoy yourselves. And that's how he was. I said he was incredibly different from so many football managers that I'd ever met. Yes, you know, he was a great character. You know, we know he had his colourful side, you know, as well to him. You know, he had a bit of fun from time to time. But yeah, just a lovely man. Will be deeply missed by everybody.
Now, I get all that, and the tributes are very good, Danny. But as you alluded to there, he was very popular in more than one way. He was very popular with the ladies as well. How, as players, did you guys deal with that or observe that? I mean, he was a very quiet, unassuming man. I mean, he was hardly Sean Connery, was he? You know, and he did very, very well with the females in his life. So, what was your reaction as players to all of that?
Like I said, he was an incredibly charming man, incredibly intelligent man, you know, and he was able to speak to anybody at any given moment. Okay, sometimes we might raise an eyebrow, perhaps, of maybe didn't see that one coming. But for us,
more like Roger Moore than Sean Connery by the sound of it, I think, there, Danny.
Raising an eyebrow.
It didn't make any difference. You know, he was very engaging. And maybe we didn't sort of see that as players so much, obviously, around with England because you're not around very often. But certainly when when I worked with him day to day at Manchester City, you know, you saw what he was like. You know, he would engage with everybody. He would speak to. It didn't matter who it was. You know, he wanted to know about people. He wanted to know what made them tick, right down from the kit ladies to the people in the dining room. All these types of people. You know, he had time for everybody. And I think that was a very enduring, personality trait that he had. He would ask questions about other people. You know, it wasn't just expecting people to ask questions about him. And it was just a really good.
He's responsible. He's responsible for Alex Ferguson cancelling his retirement because at United had him lined up to come there before City, and then Fergie really took the hump with this, so he did, and he cancelled his retirement.
Because there was always something, wasn't there, between like when I think it was when Wayne Rooney was injured. Daddy, you remember this, and the fact that I think Sven was having some arguments with Alex Ferguson when Ferguson was saying no, we don't want him to go to England, and Sven insisted on that. So he obviously showed that he had quite a backbone and stood up to anybody that had a go at him.
Yeah, and also he had an influence in the early days at Chelsea. I think when Roman Abramovich came in, and obviously there was all sorts of money being thrown around at that time. I think Sven was, one of the people that, or Roman and his advisors were listening to about, who we should recruit as players. Sven had been around Europe, had this wealth of experience, was incredible at being able to spot a good player and a not so good player. So Sven was involved in that as well. So it just goes to show that he was hugely respected, throughout football. Had a magnificent career as a manager, absolutely superb. I think, there will be people that look at some of the things that happen maybe outside of football, and maybe hold that against him. They'll hold his demeanour against him, at times that, he wasn't that Churchillian, speech maker, that teacup thrower, the hairdryer treatment as Sir Alex Ferguson, maybe was. He was different, but he stood by that. He never ever changed, and he was never ever going to change. And like I said, we'll all miss him. A hugely influential figure, certainly in my career. Who knows what would happen if he hadn't picked me and played me for England. But like I said, I think the words that he finished with, try not to be sad for me. Live your life, go out there, live it, have fun, do it with a smile on your face. I think is one of the most poignant things that anyone could say.
Well, good advice, good advice. Danny, lovely to hear from you, and the tribute that you paid Sven there. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, there we go. But, I find it strange. You see these newspapers, The Sun, for instance, a true gent of the game. Yeah. They weren't saying a true gent of the game when he was running after Ulrika up the stairs and whatever.
My goodness me. I mean, he was front page more than he was back page. But I think what I've learned about him over the last couple of years, more than anything else, is the fact when it was the old Bob Paisley phrase, wasn't there, about it being life, it's not life and death football, it's more important. He felt that it wasn't,
It wasn't Bob Paisley.
It wasn't Bob Paisley, it was Bill Shankly.
It
was Bill Shankly. A couple of years before. Bob probably used it, mate. It was Bill Shankly. But anyway, the most important thing is that the phrase,
Yes.
he didn't go that way. He always said that it wasn't the most important thing, is that life was the most important thing, not the football.
Yeah.
Unlike the
was
late,
good.
great Bill Shankly, Liverpool manager of 1974.
OK,
Thanks.
right, we'll talk more about Sven as the programme progresses this morning. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Thank you.
Right, stay with us. Lots more still coming your way. We're going to be looking at what's making the news with Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon in just a moment. See you then.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell. Holding in South Lanarkshire, the A702 is partly blocked northbound by a fallen tree at Dolphinton. In Derbyshire, the A514 is closed northbound along Osmaston Road in Derby after a fire yesterday evening. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winson Green is closed each way for an investigation. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking around a quarter of an hour, and westbound delays approaching the M25 because of roadworks. Train services are suspended between Chichester and Portsmouth Harbour because of a signalling problem. On the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed where someone's broken down on the westbound exit at Junction 5, the turn for Eastleigh and for Southampton Airport. And in Devon, the A39 is blocked each way for an investigation between Bideford and Wesley. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We've got Claire Muldoon and we've got Alex Armstrong, and they've got the newspapers in front of them. And some reports just on the Notting Hill Carnival. You know, every year, stabbings, an attempted murder, arrests beyond belief. And it's always, don't criticise the Notting Hill Carnival. It's the community getting out in the streets or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you just have a view on it?
Oh, I have a strong view on it, and let's compare Glastonbury, which is a 5-day-long event. There's 30 arrests. There's never any stabbings. We have 3 or 4 stabbings, I think, were confirmed as of last night at Notting Hill Carnival, and 230+ arrests. This is what we know so far. There'll be a follow-up from this overnight, of course, when the Met report more. And I just think, it's an excuse to say this is OK because it's a celebration of community. Well, actually, I don't think it is. It seems to be plagued by incredible amounts of crime, drugs...
Year after
year. And we excuse it on this diversity excuse. It's nonsense, isn't it? Anything else would have been shut down and banned years ago, but we get it gets away with it because it's Notting Hill Carnival.
It's just the stage
The stench of West London is just absolutely disgusting.
What do you mean?
Really
What do you mean?
It's minging, as we would say.
Really?
Oh, God, yeah. The smell of excrement, the smell of urine.
Really?
The smell of drugs, yes.
I've never been.
I've never been either.
I was admiring
Oh.
a number of girls' bottoms walking through the town
You
yesterday.
need to stop admiring girls' bottoms.
On my way home, it was quite shocking. And then they had bare bums right in front of me, and they're walking down the street.
I'll just say, look, I don't like. I love a good celebration. We all love a festival, right?
I love a good bum.
No, of course. Can also appreciate a good bum. But I do think we need to have a serious conversation about this. We do need to get serious and say there are people who are genuinely in hospital over this event.
But are they targeting the fact that, the carnival and using it as an excuse? Is it too big now to police? There's some discussion about whether it should be moved just down the road to Hyde Park, where there'll be easier entrances and exits, and not all the narrow streets.
The streets impede the police arriving and the emergency services and whatever. If there's, if you go and treat someone who's stabbed, it's very, very
and it
difficult.
makes it easier for the criminals to operate in those circumstances. But I think it would be a shame if it was axed. I mean, I've danced in the street. I've been in
Did you shoot your bum off?
I was wearing white shorts and I had green paint handprints by the end of the day on my bottom.
There you go.
But the other thing people don't talk about and don't address is the cost of it. 7,000 police to enforce some semblance of order and discipline, of which clearly they were overrun and outnumbered. But then they actually start putting up the gates for pedestrian access in the Thursdays before. So you've got a whole week of local authorities spending money to police it, to contain it, to clean it up. And the cost of cleaning, I think, is absolutely awful.
It's an incredible indulgence, isn't it?
I really do think it is. An absolute indulgence, and it ought to be stopped.
OK. Your views very, very welcome. Let us know.
Let's talk about the royal relief, shall we, Claire? Apparently, the royal family should be extremely grateful that this paperback version of Spare that is due to drop 2 days before the King heads out to the Commonwealth.
Samoa, yes, indeed, in October.
Samoa, won't have any fresh whinging in it.
Do you know what?
Well, I find it amazing that they release a paperback that isn't updated. Everybody's paperback is updated from the hardback.
Yes, everyone's is, apart from Harry's. And it's not only the royal family that are quite happy that's not the case. I think I am too. And I think most of your viewers will be as well.
The Taliban, they might be relieved as well.
The Taliban.
You never know.
Who wants to read more doom and gloom with Harry and Meghan Markle?
But maybe this is a sign. Maybe it's a sign that they're starting to wind down. I mean, I could be talking, probably I'm talking utter nonsense here, but maybe they're learning that they don't want to keep upsetting the royal family and are just not putting any more nonsense out.
Why send it out? Why make it in a paperback if they're not updating the content?
Well,
perhaps they're waiting for the next book.
Another way to make money.
Yeah, or the next book is coming around the corner. Who knows?
But the whole thing is, it doesn't make money if it's not.
If it's not got new content.
No. Well, if you haven't got new content, why would you buy it? Why, you had a chance to buy the hardback. Why would you buy the paperback?
I always prefer a paperback because they're just less heavy. I hate a hardback. Does anyone else think that?
No,
You're lying in bed with a giant hardback. It's really not enjoyable.
And it's very difficult to carry it.
Yeah.
It's not very portable.
It's not very nice. So maybe just buy it because it's more portable. There we go.
Portable spare. Here, I've got a spare copy for you.
Very good.
Cockroaches, Alex, at the BBC.
That's no way to describe Jermaine Jenner.
You stole my spotlight,
Oh,
Isabel.
sorry. I'm sorry, I've been holding on to that.
I was going to say, I mean, who would have guessed it? But there we go.
Sorry.
There we go. No, not at all. Not at all. So, look, I mean, so experts confirm the BBC is crawling with cockroaches. The one show is the one show in particular that seems to be infested. They've had reports from the Green Room and everywhere else that celebrities are running scared of the cockroaches running around in there. They also have an infestation of rats, I believe, on the EastEnders set, to name just a couple. But the BBC have put out a strong statement saying that we have an effective and proactive pest control policy. So there we go.
Oh, thank God that's the only policy they've got going on there. That'll be a change of books, wouldn't it?
We had an infestation last summer.
Oh, the flies.
What were they called?
They were like fruit flies.
Fruit flies.
Yeah.
Fruit
We didn't
flies.
have any fruit, so I don't know why they were infesting us.
Loads of fruit flies, but
that wasn't
because of the unisex toilet.
It's good this year.
Yeah,
It's not,
we haven't had that again.
Do did they get in the studio here?
Whilst we're on air.
Oh, that's so annoying.
Everywhere.
It is difficult in these work environments because people are generally quite gross at work.
Absolutely.
They don't clean up behind themselves. But I think for headline writers, they're going to have a field day with this. You know, you've got to take your pick, whether it's, you know, Hugh Edwards or whatever else it might be. There's so many people that have been disgraced recently.
You have to open the Sun up on page 3, and it does. I mean, it does. The Sun too say BBC is full of pests. ... Tell us something we don't know. I'm sure they're going to have a field day with it. I'm sure.
Right, let's talk about violent criminals allowed to just say sorry, Alex. This is in the front of the Telegraph.
Yes.
Why is this?
OK, this is actually something I never had heard of before, and I have to say I'm really shocked, and I think the audience are going to be super shocked to hear this as well, because there is something called, let me get this right, community resolutions. And these are basically some sort of apology once you're arrested that allows you to get off by not being prosecuted or getting a criminal record. And some shocking stats for you that there are people who have committed violent crimes, or have had possession of a weapon who have been let off with just an apology. And this is up shocking 40% since 2019. And to give the audience some idea, people who have been let off on this community resolution with weapons, with even knife crime, is up 77%. This is absolutely shocking. And with knife crime at record levels in 8 forces the last year, do we really think this is how we should be policing our country? I mean, it seems these stories around our prisons and justice system are getting out of control. We've got criminals who are due to be released, I don't know, on the streets. I think it's on the 10th of September, which is just about a week away. And I just think it's shocking.
But you're not bringing into fact that there are no places in prison.
But this is it.
These people.
And we lock up more people than any other Western European nations.
Yeah, well, something's clearly wrong in our society, isn't it, that this is happening?
And yet the Prime Minister is locking up even more for thinking things, putting things out in social media, and indeed having a view on things. It's almost as if he's trying to clear the decks for the next general election, and he's locking away people who don't agree with him and who therefore can't vote for him, or meaning they can't vote for his opposition.
I think we do need to have a really serious conversation about we need to reset clearly the rules and the social contract we have on our justice in the country, because we seem to be letting people off who have got, when we got robbery up 120%, 27% these community resolutions. Do we really think that's okay? I mean, we either build more prisons or let's reset let's have a serious conversation about crime in this country.
OK, Alex, we'll have a serious conversation again in about 45 minutes. We've got to say goodbye to Claire and Alex just for the moment. And
we say good morning to the Shadow Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Andrew Griffiths, who joins us this morning. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Look, it feels like we've been hearing about this speech that is going to be made in the Rose Garden for days now. Are you braced for quite a few criticisms coming in the direction of the Tories?
Well, look, this is a huge moment for trust in politics. I think Keir Starmer was going to talk about trust, but he didn't in his manifesto mention the raid on pensioners' fuel allowances, the bumper rises they've given to public sector workers, that they've going to probably put up taxes to do that. And in particular, he promised to introduce new levels of transparency and integrity. And yet what we've seen week by week over the last few weeks over the summer is revelations about Labour appointments to the civil service, the independent civil service. These aren't just the normal special advisors that all governments make political appointments to. These are some of the top roles in the independent civil service that Labour's been giving to donors and its political supporters. So it's pretty rich to talk about trust in politics at the same time as that. I hope that he uses this as an opportunity to rescind those appointments. But there are really important issues for Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor on ministerial interests, to see if the ministerial code has been broken, as many of us believe it has.
But he will use the Rose Garden, won't he, for the location for his speech at 10 o'clock this morning, which so many people will, whether they were Conservatives or not, forever associate, and he's written in the Times about it this morning, with the swing being broken by the staff at Downing Street during the lockdown regulations during COVID, where we saw Prime Minister Boris Johnson having wine and cheese on the day he said people could only meet one person outside. And, of course, also the location where good old Dominic Cummings held his sort of non-mea culpa, trying to justify his trip to Barnard Castle, again breaking the rules. So it will be a little bit embarrassing, won't it?
Well, that's the framing that Keir Starmer will try and put on things. But he also promised to introduce different standards to hold himself up to the highest standards of integrity. We're sitting here right now with Labour appointing donor after donor, giving Downing Street passes to people who've paid for his glasses and his suits. And it's time that the independent ministerial advisor on standards and conflicts looked into this government, where it looks like we've got minister after minister, Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves, Peter Kyle, the Shadow Science Secretary, all appointing, parachuting into senior civil service positions, the people who have got very, very close links or have worked for the Labour Party. No government, I know people will think, look, all governments make appointments. That is true. But no government has ever parachuted in their donors to senior civil servants at this level. That's why it's been condemned by the Institute for Government, by Whitehall Watch, even Sir Alistair Graham, the former Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. So it's not just a partisan thing. This is something that serious people who have real concerns about the politicisation of the civil service. If Keir Starmer wants to talk about trust in politics, that would be a really good place to start.
Yeah, and look, we've got Ellie Reeves coming on, chair of the Labour Party, a little bit later on, and of course we'll be making those points to her. But Sir Keir Starmer's point will be that for the last 14 years, the Conservatives pursued populist policies that he says solved nothing and chose division over taking the difficult decisions. What would you say to that?
Look, I think we all know there is an issue with trust in politics. It's why we saw low turnout, and it's why this Labour government was elected on one of the lowest levels of popular mandate of any government. And to be clear, we lost that election. But what you don't do is rebuild trust in politics by coming forward with a manifesto, not getting on and delivering that, but making speech after speech about how hard government is. Well, that's life. That's why any of us go into public service. And then coming forward with proposals like the winter fuel allowance, or scrapping the winter fuel allowance, of which there was no mention in the Labour manifesto. And if he wants to restore trust in politics, he should be reaffirming today what Labour said day after day on broadcast and during the general election, that there won't be any increases in taxes. So what they're trying to do is welch out of things that they said would not happen. What he actually needs to be doing is getting on and delivering what's in the manifesto. That's how you get trust in politics, when politicians do what they say they will do and don't do things that they said they would not do.
What do you make of Tom Tugendhat's apparent proposal to try and tackle the huge challenge of people smuggling in a similar way to the abolition of slavery, the way that was tackled? And apparently it could cost, and it was an eye-watering sum of money. He's suggesting 50 billion a year, but it might be the thing that cracks it. Is this going to be a vote winner for you?
Well, in government, we said we would do what it took. We're in the process of pushing difficult policies to tackle that issue, because it's a huge issue. It affects everybody, whether you're trying to queue up to get a social housing home, whether you can't get access to some of the public services because of the strain that they're under with people coming here illegally. We said we would do whatever it took. We were fighting the courts and the House of Lords and others that were trying to prevent us fulfill that mandate. And any idea that helps us, in common with most Western European countries, deal with this really pressing issue is to be welcomed.
And we've got party conference season coming ahead. How positive are you feeling about that? Because the party is in a very strange place at the moment, isn't it? Licking their wounds after the election, not yet with a leader. You've still got Rishi Sunak out and about yesterday. I think he was in Yorkshire at a county fair. I mean, is it going to be a productive policy-making event, or is there going to be a lot of, sort of self-indulgence, navel-gazing, maybe?
No, I think it'll be extremely productive. We've got a real job of work to do, and people say this to me every single day about holding this government to account. This is a far worse government than many people believed. This is a far more left-wing socialist government. They're coming immediately. They're raiding things like the pensioners' winter fuel allowance so that they can reward Labour-supporting unions, massive pay rises in the public sector with no productivity in return, scrapping freedom freedom of speech protections on campus in my area, scrapping the UK's future on artificial intelligence and supercomputers that was going to give us economic growth for a generation. This is a far worse government than anybody believed, and holding them to account is a job that we're doing
Andrew,
now.
We've got to say goodbye. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Shadow Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology.
And now here's the weatherman. Good morning to Craig Schnell.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A bit of a north-south split across the UK today. Many northern areas seeing some rain, but largely dry and fine further south. So we can see this rainfall first thing this morning across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But for Northern Ireland, it will quickly clear here, so conditions improve as the day goes on. That rain just moving into Cumbria and Wales later on too. And that rain just quite heavy and persistent at times, so some fairly poor travelling conditions, especially across parts of southwestern Scotland. Ahead of it, dry and bright and increasingly warm, could see highs reaching around 25 or 26 degrees in the southeast. So moving into the evening, conditions improve for many parts of Scotland. Some late spells of sunshine around, maybe the odd shower. But for southwestern Scotland and Cumbria, that rain just persisting right throughout the evening. So again, a bit of a difficult commute home here. A few showers also for Northern Ireland, and that rain just beginning to fringe into southwestern England too as we end the day. But for the rest of England, it's a fine end with some late spells of sunshine. Into the evening, that weather front will just move a little bit further eastwards. It starts to weaken as it does so, but still some patchy rain on it as we move through the nighttime period. Either side of it, some clear skies, and for all of us, it's a fairly mild night. Towns and cities staying firmly above double figures. Into Wednesday morning, that area of cloud and patchy rain just really lingers across many central parts of the country. Behind it, another spell of rain moving in for Northern Ireland and Scotland. So after a little bit of a drier spell, turns wet, unfortunately, again here. But down towards the southeastern parts of England, remaining onto the dry and fine conditions, and increasingly warm. Could see highs reaching around 28 to 29 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Lanarkshire, the A702 is partly blocked northbound by a fallen tree at Dolphinton. In Derbyshire, the A514 is closed northbound along Osmaston Road in Derby after a fire at a derelict building on Sunday evening. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winson Green is closed for an investigation. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking nearly half an hour in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. The M25 is very slow clockwise towards there too. There are some cancelled trains at Chichester after a signalling problem. On the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed where someone's broken down on the westbound exit at junction 5 for Southampton Airport. And in Devon, the A39 is blocked each way over Torridge Bridge in Bideford for an investigation. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The Prime Minister vows to bring trust back to politics.
That is despite growing cronyism engulfing Downing Street.
Sir Keir Starmer is set to give his first major speech later today ahead of Parliament's return next week.
Definitely maybe. The rumour mill, rife that Oasis are set to reform and announce a tour. They will be making an announcement 8 a.m. this morning. We're on the countdown to that.
Tributes are flowing for the former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who died yesterday at the age of 76.
Really well thought of as a man and a manager. Tributes then from Prince William to David Beckham, who said, "Thank you for being the person you've always been. Passionate, caring, calm, and a true gentleman."
As Prince Edward's daughter puts her hand up for military service, we'll be debating this morning whether all royals should be forced to spend time in the armed services. And remember, it wasn't such a happy time for her own father.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag, tuppence.
Practically perfect in every way. Today marks 60 years since the iconic film of Mary Poppins premiered, and we want to hear your favourite memories this morning.
Good morning. It's a wet start for some of us this morning, but for others, it's going to feel much more like summer today. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
Well, there we go. The time, 1 minute past the hour of 7 o'clock. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
So here we are, 58 minutes till the Oasis announcement,
yeah.
whatever that announcement should be. And you and I are wondering what it is.
What's the story this morning?
I'll tell you what the
Will
story
it be glory?
The story is Paul Coit is already... You've got your piece in history here.
I do have my piece in history. There's a film, documentary that was made about Oasis called Supersonic, which is a 2-hour film that came out. And just before the film came out, I had an email that came through and said, look, we would like to feature you in the documentary. And could you... I know you think this is a joke.
No, it's gone up in my estimation.
Could you sign the waiver? And it said that should it be used, I will get £1. So I signed it, still haven't been paid, and I feature... Now, I'm not just bigging up my own part here, but I am prominent in this film, Supersonic. And the whole film, it's been said, hangs around the part that I'm in. So I was doing a radio show for Virgin Radio.
For £1.
For a... Well, OK, yeah, it was...
They're getting 400 million for a proposed new tour.
I'm happy. See, the thing is, I'm in it for the love, Eamonn. I'm in it for the art. I'm not in it for the cash. So it's pretty much like working here. So anyway, so what happened was, so the film comes out, and I used to do a show with Roland River on. You remember the comedian Roland River? So we used to work together, entertainment show. And we had Noel Gallagher come in to the show.
No.
And he played Don't Look Back in Anger for the first time acoustically on our show.
Oh, wow.
And there were rumours of a breakup as well back in 1995. So, the whole film, if you can bear with us, because it's quite long, here is my clip from Supersonic the film.
Wow.
No? Hello? Rumours of a split or what? A banana split, yeah. Yeah? Where's the rest of the band tonight, then? Who cares?
There you go.
Wow.
So that is...
Well, we don't even see you.
It sounds like
well,
you
that's not the point, though, is it?
That's only worth £1.
Do you think... It was only worth £1. Noel, and I get straight to it. Tell us about the split. He says banana split. And then that's it, and that's the end. But I think that, it may be short, but the film hangs around that part.
Yeah.
You used the word supersonic a number of times there. Do you remember the
Aisha?
Do you remember the TV show Supersonic?
Aisha Bruff, yeah. In the 70s.
Yeah.
Used to get Mark Bolan, and she,
Yeah, it was like an ITV version of Top of the Pops.
She was the it girl at the time, wasn't she, Aisha? What happened to... I think she was like the girlfriend of some pops. Of course she was.
Supersonic, it goes at the speed of light.
I don't remember the theme. I remember her.
I remember that. Well, there we go.
I'm more of an Oasis, Mary Poppins kind of guy.
Okay. We'll talk about Mary Poppins later as well. Thank you very much indeed, Paul Coit.
Pretty good, that, wasn't it?
Right, let's talk about the most talked about speech in history, I think, in politics now. The Prime Minister is pledging to bring trust back ahead of his first address to the nation from the Rose Garden this morning.
Sir Keir Starmer has led the groundwork for this speech, warning things will get worse before they get better. Yeah, we know. We've heard all this. And Parliament is back next week, where he says it will not be business as usual.
Well, it all comes, of course, as the Prime Minister's facing pressure over accusations of cronyism, as Conservatives demand an investigation into recent civil service appointments and other things, I suppose you could say. Let's speak to the political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal. What was it? Passes for glasses. That one's going to stick, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We love a sort of rhyme in British politics. Of course, 20 years ago, it was Tony's cronies and the stuff about Tony Blair. This time, passes for glasses is the creation of the brilliant sub-editors of the Mail paper who have come up with this brilliant headline about Wahid Ali and the kind of fact he spent 20k addressing the Prime Minister and got given a Downing Street pass.
Right, give me the strategy behind this from a political correspondent's point of view. They tease and they release and they drip feed so much information on what he's going to say from Saturday, Sunday, Monday, today's Tuesday, when he will actually deliver it.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is about building up momentum. Part of it is also about ensuring that the focus is on the Prime Minister. You've got the bully pulpit here and actually making the most of that, so giving an impression of energy and dynamism. I also think there's a serious point to it, which is that, Labour knows that they came second. In 87 of their seats, Reform came second. So nearly 90 seats, Reform came second. They know they have to deliver for these people if they want to actually make kind of centre-left politics work. They want to see off the kind of so-called populist threat from the right. Part of that is about delivering in terms of public services, getting the NHS, the economy back in service, but part of it is also about cleaning up politics and being seen as whiter than white. So they have to kind of stave off the allegations of cronyism, being a government that delivers the people, and that's why you see Keir Starmer using this language of national service, of national delivery, because they very much know they'll be judged on that in 5 years' time.
Yeah, and he's cherry-picked who's going to be in the audience. There's going to be people that he met on the campaign trail, nurses, I think. There's other sort of working people, as he so often likes to describe. But you talk about the threat from Reform. Interestingly, the Express have got Farage on the front of the papers this morning, talking about how the Labour Party are making economic decisions based on who will vote at the next election, i.e. not pensioners.
Yes, and I think that the Reform threat is fascinating because they've actually been planning ahead of their conference next month to have a series of branches across the country. They now claim to me that they have 75,000 members. I think that in certain seats, if you look at the election, for instance, where there was no Reform candidate and there was just a Conservative candidate, clearly the voters who were voting Labour went elsewhere rather than to the Tories. So I think that in lots of the seats to the north, there are many voters who will not vote Conservative, but they would vote Reform. So all of Farage's interventions are to be watched with a great interest, and I wait to see over the next 5 years if they can actually build up Reform from being a limited company into a proper political fighting machine.
Interesting. All right, James Hill, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The countdown is on, ticking away to 8 o'clock this morning. Oasis is going to make a big announcement there. Stephanie Tetchy here, showbiz correspondent, as to what we may expect here. I'm seeing quite a lot of info in The Sun. They've got a preview on what it's going to be about. They say there will be Wembley gigs, Manchester gigs on this one. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing the same, and it's been 15 years in the making. I think for many years the press have been obsessed about Oasis getting back together, and these two brothers have mostly communicated mostly via slanging matches online, but now it seems that their managers and their teams have managed to get them together for them to... My chair is going down. They've managed to get them together to actually set some dates from some tours that's going to come up. Taylor Swift last week, she completed 8 shows at Wembley Stadium. Oasis is looking to top that now. They will have 10 dates at Wembley Stadium, also at the Etihad Arena in Manchester, which will be a homecoming for them. This is going to be quite lucrative. You know, I know for fans it will be historic, but for Oasis there's a lot of money involved here. If they do hit the road, they're set to make about £430 million. There is talk of them headlining Glastonbury and then taking this tour global as well.
You know, the thing about Liam Gallagher, though, it was always controversial, putting a V sign at the camera, saying what he thought. The world's moved on. People get offended at the slightest thing. I do wonder if it is just a disaster waiting to happen a little bit. Not to put it down on it, because I'm actually an Oasis fan and lived through the 90s as a sort of teenager, and my brother was a big fan and I got really into it. I'm excited to hear the news, but I do wonder if they can, A, keep their brotherly, you know, animosity at bay, or C, if he can actually, or B, if he can even just behave himself.
Well, I think what fans are craving for these days, Isabel, is nostalgia in that time of that Britpop era where we had the Spice Girls, all about girl power. Then we had Oasis, who were quite controversial, and that's what people love about them. But more than them, besides of their attitude, they've got the music to back their talk. And I think this is what people have been craving to see. We've seen so many reunions, and now it's finally happening for Oasis. And I think it's come at a good time for both of them. They're both older and wiser. No one's saying they're going to be the best of friends here, but I think the music will do all the talking on stage. I think Liam's 56, and I think maybe Noel's 52, 53, don't want to age them, but they are in their 50s. They're old rockers, and I think when there's a demand for like a reunion such as Oasis, they would be silly not to do it, and they'll be silly not to put on a good show for fans.
I love the description.
You think, are they actually going to sing this next song, or are they going to... But, you know, bear in mind, Noel walked out, you know, the last time the tour ended, he just said, stuff this.
I'm not doing it, but I think, again, that was at the height of their fame. They've been through it, the drugs, the boobs, the boozers, the boobs as well. And they've been through the divorces as well. So I think, you know, we see it. It works for the music industry. Bring the bands back together. And if our viewers are thinking about getting a ticket, apparently it's going for £130. And I can imagine them selling out pretty quickly.
I read a description that Liam Gallagher's voice was like 20 tequilas on a Friday night, and Noel Gallagher was half a pint of Guinness on a Tuesday. I thought that was quite apt. In complete contrast, the most perfect, crystal, beautiful voice, of course. Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins. Big anniversary today.
Timeless, 60 years. And one thing about Mary Poppins, it spans generations. You've got older people who've watched it and they love it, and then you get younger people, but they watched a new one with Emily Blunt and stuff, but they need to really go back to the classic, and I think it stands the test of time, such as Julie Andrews. I think the good thing about that role is she was able to show her comedic skills, her dancing skills and her singing skills, and it was a real tough act for Disney to get this film onto show, because Walt Disney had to beg for the screen rights for almost 20 years, and it was worth the wait from the writer P.L. Travers, who did not want it to be brought to screen. If you read the book, it's dreary in comparison to what we see on screen, and I think he's done it justice.
When I read the book was really beautifully illustrated, which helped. I remember being at primary school, and the fact that the film was there gave me an added appetite to read the book and then understand the film. But I was 5 when I went to the Capitol Cinema on the Antrim Road in Belfast for the matinee. And it was very good. I was there with my brothers, and my dad would bring us to see that. And it was all OK except for one scene where she feeds the old lady in St Paul's Cathedral tuppence a bag, the bird seed and all that business. That bored the pants off me.
No.
I did nod off at that stage. But by good film.
Yeah, my favourite, someone who doesn't get talked about a lot, is Dick Van Dyke, and the way he managed to pull off that Cockney accent. I think for me that was always my favourite.
The total opposite view, said it was the worst Cockney accent ever.
Loved it.
Mind you, Curtis himself sounds Australian, so what does he know?
I did think he was Australian.
What's the tactic now? Here we are.
Okay.
We're 47 minutes or so away from this announcement at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
How do you fill that time? What are you going to be doing?
Well, listening to Oasis music, looking back in anger, listening to all their collections and stuff. But I would say to our viewers, keep an eye on their social medias, because that's where the announcement's going to be made.
Is it ticket release, or is it just an announcement of a comeback?
It's going to be an announcement, and then I think the tickets will come. So they'll announce. Yeah, no, it's not a Taylor Swift thing.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. Good stuff. We look forward to it. Thanks so much, Steph.
I have a real genuine problem with the Oasis. I mean, you know, I think Wonderwall is a wonderful song. There's lots of lovely things that they've done, but I could not, out of principle and for the love of money or anything, I just couldn't go to the Etihad Stadium and watch them.
Why? Because you're not a fan?
No, I'm a United supporter, not a City supporter. And there's too much Man City propaganda coming from them, and I wouldn't want to contribute or pay towards it.
I think you'll be there. I think if someone gave you a golden ticket, Eamonn, you would be there.
Maybe Wembley, but I wouldn't be going to the Etihad.
Do you know, I had an ex-boyfriend who wanted to be Liam Gallagher so much that he dressed.
Did he have the shaggy cut?
The green parka. He was in a band. Almost like a double act.
Well, that was the 90s all over, and I think this is why it's so special about them reuniting. We love Britpop in this country.
Yeah.
So
it was always Oasis, not Blur.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Blur, but it was
Who do you prefer, Noel or Liam?
Noel, I think.
Yeah, I know Liam. I like Liam.
You're a Liam girl.
I like a bad boy.
There you go.
You said Liam was the older of the two.
No, Noel is.
Yeah,
Noel's older.
Older and more sensible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Come back and talk to us again.
I will.
Thank you very much indeed. Other stories coming into the newsroom on this Tuesday morning. This is what we've got for you.
Yes, residents of an East London block of flats engulfed by what they call a nightmare fire say they've lost everything. Everyone's been accounted for, no injuries reported after a major incident was declared following that fire in Dagenham. More than 100 people were evacuated from the building. 2 were taken to hospital.
Notting Hill Carnival now over. It's wrapped up for another year. Yesterday, 5 people stabbed, 230 arrested. That comes after 3 people were stabbed on Sunday, including a 32-year-old mother who's in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted. 90 arrests were made on the first day of the event.
From today, the NHS 111 helpline will now offer mental health support to adults and children in crisis. Local health systems previously had their own separate phone lines, which took about 200,000 calls a month. It makes the NHS in England one of the first countries to offer such support service for mental health issues, as well as for physical problems.
I hope you had a good day yesterday, whatever you were doing. Today, here's what's in store with Craig Snell.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A bit of a north-south split across the UK today. Many northern areas seeing some rain, but largely dry and fine further south. So we can see this rainfall first thing this morning across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But for Northern Ireland, it will quickly clear here, so conditions improve as the day goes on. That rain just moving into Cumbria and Wales later on too. And that rain just quite heavy and persistent at times, so some fairly poor travelling conditions, especially across parts of southwestern Scotland. Ahead of it, dry and bright and increasingly warm, could see highs reaching around 25 or 26 degrees in the southeast. So moving into the evening, conditions improve for many parts of Scotland. Some late spells of sunshine around, maybe the odd shower. But for southwestern Scotland and Cumbria, that rain just persisting right throughout the evening. So again, a bit of a difficult commute home here. A few showers also for Northern Ireland, and that rain just beginning to fringe into southwestern England too as we end the day. But for the rest of England, it's a fine end with some late spells of sunshine. Into the evening, that weather front will just move a little bit further eastwards. It starts to weaken as it does so, but still some patchy rain on it as we move through the nighttime period. Either side of it, some clear skies, and for all of us, it's a fairly mild night. Towns and cities staying firmly above double figures. Into Wednesday morning, that area of cloud and patchy rain just really lingers across many central parts of the country. Behind it, another spell of rain moving in for Northern Ireland and Scotland. So after a little bit of a dry spell, turns wet, unfortunately, again here. But down towards the southeastern parts of England, remaining onto the dry and fine conditions, and increasingly warm. Could see highs reaching around 28 to 29 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, it's time now for the Great British Giveaway. It really is great. It's £30,000, but you're going to have to hurry.
You hurry, because 5 o'clock Friday this week, lines will close, so have a go.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, here's a question. Prince Edward's daughter, she has enlisted in the armed forces. She's in cadet mode there and will go to full forces. So the question is...
Well, should all the young royals be signing up and volunteering in the same way that she has? We'll be debating it after this.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, the King's niece, Lady Louise Windsor, reportedly aspires to become the first female royal to serve in the military since the late Queen. She's even put it on her LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, she's 20 years of age. Currently, she's a member of the University Officers Training Corps at St Andrews.
Yes, she aims to emulate the military service of her own father, Prince Edward, and other male relatives.
Which I find strange because his military service was a complete disaster.
4 months or something, wasn't it, before he pulled out?
With the Royal Marines, and it wasn't for him. So interesting that he's supporting his daughter, if she's going for that. Question is, should royal children be, well, almost forced, should it be part of their duty to serve in the military?
Well, to debate this, we're joined by the defence analyst and former British Army Office Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford and the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Let's get the military perspective, first of all, then, from you, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford. Should they be forced?
Well, as someone who actually commanded a university officer training corps, the Edinburgh University Officer Training Corps, I have great affection and respect for those institutions. However, I think that forced is probably too rigid. I would say strongly encouraged, because there's a lot that they can learn from serving in the Officer Training Corps. Plus, of course, they get paid, and they generally have the cheapest bars in any university in the land. So not forced, but encouraged, because I think there's a lot to be learned from serving in the cadet forces. And there's no compulsion to join the regular armed forces afterwards. So it's really a university-only thing.
Richard, if she was to join the armed forces afterwards, how do you think that goes down with the members of the public? Do they look and say, well done her, she's got herself a job?
Well, I'm assuming that if she were to join the armed forces, and particularly the army afterwards, she would probably try to present herself at Sandhurst and undergo officer training. Now, that's no mean feat, having been through it myself and hated every minute of it because I found it very tough. It does benchmark you and benchmarks your character. So I think that a certain amount of admiration should go towards her if that's the path that she chooses. And of course, if she's determined to succeed, then I'm sure she'd be a great asset to the army, no matter which arm or service that she might choose to join.
What do you think, Richard?
Well, I think that the link, and I'm sure we'd all agree on this, between the royal family and the armed forces is absolutely pivotal because, the king as commander-in-chief, this is such a pivotal role because, of course, it's not so much the power he has, but the power denied to others and members of the royal family. For example, if we look back to Lady Louise's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, in the auxiliary territorial service during the war. That was, of course, very significant. And what we've got very clearly is the possibility of George, Charlotte and Louis joining in one capacity or another. But what is absolutely certain, I think, is that whether or not they actually decided to join, and that is up to each individual. No one should be forced, of course, that would be ridiculous, and certainly ridiculous today. But they would also have honorary titles. For example, you mentioned Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh. That this was his stint in the Royal Marines was not successful temperamentally and for various reasons. It simply didn't work. But on the other hand, if you look at Prince William, if you look at Prince Harry, on this particular issue, I think Harry has always said that his stint the armed forces, 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, with the making of him. So I think it's a tremendously significant that they have links, whether honorary links or whether links in the field.
But in an increasingly volatile and uncertain world, lots of speculation about whether there's a big world war on the horizon. Is there a threat to our royal family if they are to be involved in the services? I mean, I think back, we talked about D-Day a lot with the anniversary this summer and how King George VI had to actually pull back from wanting himself to go across on D-Day. I mean, there is a concern about too much involvement from the royals when it comes to these sorts of crises, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely, because, of course, Prince William would have served in the front line if he could have, but it simply wasn't considered feasible. I mean, he put those with him in danger, and indeed, as you know, when Prince Harry was in Afghanistan, certainly the first tour of duty, he was pulled back for this very reason. What is important is the links, whether the links from the field, one thinks back, for example, the Duke of Edinburgh, or indeed you think of the naval service, George V, or indeed as Duke of York at the Battle of Jutland, George VI. This has been extremely significant in the history of the royal family going back hundreds of years. I mean, one thinks of Henry V at Agincourt, or indeed Elizabeth I and her Tilbury speech, and you get to 1743, when George IV was the last monarch to lead his army in the field. All of this is part and parcel of the proud military tradition of the royal family, and the links are so significant. But obviously, it depends on the individual as to whether or not they would wish to actually join. But there will be links, and those links will be treasured by the military and by the royal family.
So, gentlemen, just finally and briefly, royal children in the armed forces, necessary, recommended, or not necessary? Well, what's your view, first of all, Stuart?
Well, I think it should be recommended. I think they've got a lot to give and there's got a lot to learn, and it's part and parcel of learning, if you like, the role of being a member of the royal family. So I would think it shouldn't be forced, but it should be strongly encouraged.
OK, and Richard?
Royal links to the military in one sort or another, absolutely essential, but certainly not necessarily, if the personality of the individual doesn't suit it, not in the field. So it would be a link in one way or another, and that will continue, and it's invaluable, especially, and you mentioned the pressures on the military these days. They need all the spokespersons in one way or another. They can find in all sorts of, in all forms of life.
OK, gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts this morning on that. We open up the floor to everybody listening and watching at home. Let us know your thoughts. You can do that through our website, gbnews.com/your say. As for Lady Louise, what do you think? She seems a very serious young lady to me. I don't know much about her, but she seems
to do the right thing.
Serious, and I think on her LinkedIn she said she's considering law, being in the diplomatic corps, or being in the military. So she's got big ambitions. Interesting to see what she ends up doing.
Good luck to her, whatever she ends up doing. We are doing sport next. We're doing that with Paul Coit. More tributes to Sven-Göran and Eriksson right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A92 is blocked southbound by a fallen tree between Fruquet and Glenrothes. On the M73 in Glasgow, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 2A from the M8 to Muirhead, causing delays. On the M1 in Nottinghamshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 27 and 28 from Hucknall to the Alfreton and Mansfield. Turn it slope towards and past there. In Derbyshire, the A514 is closed northbound along Osmaston Road in Derby after a fire on Sunday evening. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winston Green is closed for an investigation. In London, the A20 is closed eastbound from Sidcup to the M25 after over the weekend roadworks overran. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking half an hour in queues approaching the M25.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're going to talk about Sven-Göran Eriksson, we're going to talk about football transfers, the US Open tennis and baseball, all with this man, Paul Coit.
And very quickly, as much as I can get in that short space of time. Firstly, Sven, so many tributes still about Sven-Göran Eriksson. I did mention that earlier, though, because it's the most bizarre one that we've done this twice, because when he announced that he was ill, this was back in January, and said, you know, it looks like I don't have more than a year left. Tributes, obviously, there, and I like the fact that he managed to see them all and he managed to hear them all, and it meant a lot to him. And there's a new documentary that came out, which was literally days ago, and they had it's on Amazon, which is called Sven, which is a really good watch, by the way. And they had the premiere, and it was expected that he was going to be there, but unfortunately he was too ill to attend. He had members of the family go along, but little did we know that he'd passed away within 3 days. After that. But it's a very good watch and very interesting. And I still find it difficult, I don't know about both of you, to actually, I know you asked Danny Mills this, Eamonn, because I was thinking the same thing, is how someone that seems so quiet and unassuming and just very, almost boring when you would see him, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, but would be a man that's so full of charisma and also to be so successful as a football manager, because he was in Sweden and started off like at 27, started being a manager, and everything seemed to work. And then he found himself going to Portugal there for Benfica, and then he took them to a title. Then he headed over to Italy. You know, he won a title with Lazio, and everything he did and everything he touched turned to gold. Until he got to England, and then it was almost like, well, there we are. That's the only one that's never going to work, because nobody seems to be able to make it work with that golden generation. But a very, very successful football manager.
It depends what motivates you. I mean, I would find in my case, people encouraging me, talking to me, building me up would work. The hairdryer treatment, not so much for me.
The carrot or the stick, isn't it? It's the carrot or the stick. But I think that the secret of a lot of good managers is that they would deal with players in a different way that suits their personality. You look at the old, so you probably talk about Fergie, even going back to the Bill Nicholson days, who would never, ever praise anybody. And Cliff Jones always said that once he came off after they won the double in '61 playing for Spurs, and Bill Nicholson said to him, "Oh, well done, son." And he said, Bill, you've never, ever said that to me. And he said, well, don't forget, a pat on the back is just a couple of inches away from a kick up the backside, which is what it is, because he would very rarely praise. But it's dealing with people, and also players are different.
Yeah, and he took a lot of the media intrusion in his stride, didn't he? He never seemed to let it get to him. And let's be honest, I knew him more because I'm not a huge football fan, but I obviously remember him with Ulrika Johnson and Nancy Delolio. He was always in the tabloids, wasn't he? And yet he was quite philosophical about it. He didn't get bitter about it.
This is in the documentary. It comes over as well, and he's very calm about it and said, you know, well, that was life. It was things that I did, and when they discuss it, and we'll speak to Adrian Bevington a little bit later, who's an FA executive, so he was in the middle of everything that was going on, and obviously having to advise him and try and deal with whatever was going on away from football, and he did. He just sort of took it very much in his stride, and you know, that's how it is. That's what the press got to do.
Transfer world, what's going on?
A few bits and pieces. We've got Raheem Sterling, so he's frozen out at Chelsea. What's going to happen to him? There was talk about Aston Villa. Now it seems that Aston Villa are not going to be able to do this. £300,000 a week, so someone's got to match it. And maybe he's coming to you, Eamonn. It could be Manchester United that are interested. Played at Liverpool
and that
City.
would involve a Sancho swap.
Yeah, I think this is the word. Got until Friday, so decision's got to be made by Friday.
Well, we'll hear from his people before we hear from
We will hear from his people before we hear from our people. So he's got to get a move, or else he's not going to play football, but he is going to accept. What would you do? What would you do? Would you accept the money, just sit on it, take the money, or maybe take a slight pay cut and then go and play somewhere?
I think you have to play somewhere. If I was a player, I wouldn't be watching, you know, I've got 2 or 3 years left.
I agree.
Why would I want just to take the money and sit and do nothing, you know?
And lose your credibility.
I agree. I'm really... When we look at huge money, the difference between £300,000 a week and £200,000 a week sounds like a lot, but when it's all coming in one go, I think you need to move.
My friend, I have got to go to the break. Have you got anything you need to insert very quickly?
I do have very quickly. This is a very, very important baseball story. It's an incredible story. Now, this has happened. It's the first time in 168 years of baseball history that such a thing has happened, and it is a catcher that played for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, what happened is that he was playing for the Toronto Blue Jays, and this was back in June, and then the game was postponed due to rain. So it was the Blue Jays against the Boston Red Sox. So the game is cancelled. They've got to replay it at some point and carry on after the second innings. In the time in between, he leaves the Blue Jays and plays for the Red Sox. So when the game resumes, he's played for both sides.
How can he get away with that?
Because that's the rules.
Them is the rules.
And he's allowed to do that. So there he is, and he played for both teams, and it's the first time it's ever been seen, and it's ever been done in baseball. And,
did it go down badly?
Hey, you know what? They're much more friendly about their sport over there, aren't they? They don't really seem to worry too much about it.
I think that's weird.
But there we are.
I've been to see the Blue Jays.
Danny Jansen.
I've been to see the Blue Jays.
Have you?
Yeah, in Toronto, yeah.
See, if you went and then watched the Red Sox after the Blue Jays...
I haven't done that, no.
So you went from a red to a blue? Is that ever going to happen?
I just stayed the blue. Stayed the blue.
Stay with the Reds.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. We're going to be right back reviewing the newspapers right after this.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Soya, almond, oats, hazelnut, coconut milk.
Yeah.
It's now much more difficult to choose.
Yeah, there's an awful lot out there on the market. So how do you feel about horse milk? Yes, you heard that right. For generations, people in Central Asia have sworn by horse milk and the supposed health benefits. And now researchers in Poland believe it should even be used in ice cream. For the sweet treat not only tastes delicious, apparently, but could also be good for your gut.
OK, well, joining us now to give us the lowdown on why we should be considering switching over to horse milk is farmer Frank Shellard from Cromwell Farm, Britain's only horse dairy. Good morning, Frank. Look, you're an expert on all things milk. You've even written a book on it. Is horse milk good for you? How does it compare nutritionally, first of all, to cow's milk?
I think the big difference is, just to make the point from the very start, cows, sheep and goats and all those other alternative milks have got 4 stomachs. Horse has got a single stomach, so a lot of the enzymes and a lot of the makeup of the milk is very similar to mother's milk. So our bodies are a lot more able, us being a single stomach animal, if you like, to digest that milk. So that's the big thing. That's the first point I'd like to make. Because of the makeup of the mare's milk, you could drink the lactose and the lactase in it. You could probably, not all, don't quote with everybody, but a big percentage of those people that are lactose intolerant could drink the mare's milk. The great thing about the mare's milk is it's very, very good for your gut flora. If you remember in the history books, Cleopatra bathed in ass's milk, and ass's milk is exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same makeup as mare's milk, and she bathed in it for eternal youth and to keep the skin and her metabolism correct.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, to go to A&E, decided to treat their ailments and their wounds themselves. Claire, tell us more.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about people with arms hanging off and stuff like that. For me, it's actual common sense.
Yeah,
Long
I
gone.
think it's what people used to do.
You've taken the words right out of my mouth, as normally you always do. Thank you very much, Eamonn. Because we just saw with the same thing here. Yeah, who doesn't have a first aid kit now in the house? Who doesn't know basic first aid skills? This is what we're talking about. People would far rather just make a sling up or, you know, treat the wound themselves. What's new about that?
Yeah, but also it's quite good if you've taken the pressure off A&E staff.
That's what I think too.
And you think,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I little things like colds people go to A&E for now. It's absolutely bonkers. And this is why our National Health Service is so overwhelmed.
One of the reasons But why. these are people who've been advised by their GP to go to A&E.
Look, so presumably there's something more that even a GP thinks that they can deal with. So at that point, I'd be concerned. If it's about, you know, get a stitch, I would be perfectly happy to stitch my own hand, for example. So, like, my husband picked a glass water jug out of the fridge yesterday, and it smashed on the floor, and he cut his foot, and I got a little butterfly stitch. Did his that's absolutely fine. But if the doctor's advising you to, well, a butterfly stitch. Not,
what's a butterfly
It's like
stitch?
a tiny little bit of tape, but you just make sure you pull the skin tight and put it across.
See, I think this is the sort of stuff we should teach at school. Is like, OK, what do you really need to go to A&E for? Because
Alex,
as long as you
we
clean
got
the
taught
wound
that
properly,
at Brownies.
We
got taught
didn't.
basic first aid
I didn't.
at Brownies.
Yeah.
I knew my son got it done at Scouts. This should be implemented into the national curriculum, like you said, because, as Eamonn quite rightly said, you will be taking the pressure off A&E and the NHS. So why do it? But headlines like this are grabbing time, and it's misleading because it's not the case.
Meanwhile, if you go to the chippy or the takeaway in general, you will notice that the prices have soared, absolutely soared. And I often look at the menu and think, well, look, I get a very good salary and I can afford this, but surely to goodness most households could not afford what they're being asked to here.
Right. I mean, this is a relatively interesting story, because I think a lot of people are feeling food inflation, but takeaway inflation is another big thing where things that would be cheap, a cheap night out for you, are now costing the same as what would be an expensive meal. And this story here is saying that fish and chips have gone up 50% over 5 years. What used to be a £5 for fish and chips basically now is a tenner.
11 quid in my area.
11 quid?
Yeah.
I
paid £8.50 for a small fish and chips just the other week, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's absolutely shocking.
If you substitute out the fish and get a battered sausage, apparently that's much cheaper.
Really? Interesting.
So it's not fish and chips anymore.
But just to give the
battered sausage.
No,
that's what you got the fish and chips for.
Why is it? Well, I know there was a big issue with getting sunflower oil and other sorts of oil post-Ukraine invasion. So that linked to the
and then the
high
potato
price
blight
hike
as well.
Well, you're right. So there's a potato
Seldom
harvest
wrong,
shortage.
Alex, I'm seldom wrong.
That's that's very true, Claire. So potato harvest shortage. We've also got energy costs, labour costs as well, and then also an interesting that I hadn't heard of, that there's a tariff on Russian seafood of 35%. So this is what the chippies are blaming. But I don't know how much of that I buy. You can get a card, can't you?
Tell you, I moved down to London about 27 years ago, and I couldn't get round the fact that there was no haddock for a start, right? In Glasgow, you have a fish supper. That's it. You had none of this nonsense. So I'll have a cod, please, with chips. I mean, what? That should be going with it.
What about battered Mars bar?
But then... Don't be racist. Don't be racist.
I love a battered Mars bar.
I
do, yeah.
I've never had one.
4 years, yeah.
I've never had one, Alex.
You should try
one.
one.
I'll be battered on you in a minute. So anyway,
but are you saying a fish supper should be haddock and chips?
Or cod and chips, doesn't really matter. But
chips,
the point is, you don't need to wait. You don't need to ask for extra chips, because the chips that come are massive.
Yeah.
You get a huge portion of that.
Sometimes
and then
the
you've
portions are too big.
I like the
That's
little
what I'm
crispy bits at the bottom.
Yes.
Oh, there's a special word for it. I can't think what they're called.
Yeah,
but
no,
they sell them in M&S, don't they?
Yeah.
You just get the crispy bits.
I was in Belfast last week, and I just thought all the portions were huge compared to England.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Is that where the Americans get it from?
Americans, big portions as well, yeah.
Could well be. You see, people in Belfast don't judge things necessarily by how good the food is. It's the size of
it,
it.
how much of it you get.
I think that's
Value for
linked to
money.
the climate. I think because places where the weather's bad a lot of the time, you just want comfort food, big portions.
Yeah.
I always think that's why Scotland has a lot of sort of deep-fried Mars bars and things like that.
Right, let us know your view on that, and what do you think? I mean, also, I just can't have fish and chips without peas. I have to have mushy
peas and vinegar.
Always vinegar.
Always vinegar.
Yeah,
What is people's aversion to vinegar in
I
England?
haven't a bloody clue.
I love
Honestly.
Is there an aversion to
Yes.
There is an aversion to vinegar. Excuse, could you put vinegar on that, please? Vinegar.
I smother it. I smother it in salt and smother it in vinegar.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
It's a bit naughty. I like a ketchup and mayonnaise mixture.
Claire, tell us about parental love.
This is actually a really nice story here in the Times. Using MRI scans, researchers have found for the first time that deep-seated in one's psyche, there is an abundance of love, and that abundance of love is parental love, and I think that's just so beautiful.
That's the strongest type of love.
It's the strongest type of love. And
They could see the waves in the brain when they were talking about their partners and their other family members, and then when their kids came into it, they
my mother doesn't have that, unfortunately, in her brain. I'll tell you,
you
I've got
do.
it.
Yeah, you mother us all here as well.
Yes, that is my pride and joy are my children, and indeed you all, apart from you.
People try and do that where they classify love, which love is stronger. But love is love, surely. I understand there are different types of love that you would have for a partner as opposed to a child, but you still have
fraternal love, you know, your love with your sibling love, and, you know, your sexual attraction part of love as well for your partner, and all of that. But parental love is just all-consuming, and there's just something so special about it. And thank God there is.
Yeah, although I have 4 other brothers, and I wouldn't tell any of them I love them, I suppose, but I love them dearly, and I would be devastated if something happened to them. So I'm aware that I have a love, an unspoken love for them. But love for your partner is tremendous if you're lucky enough to have that.
Well, that's the only person who ever chooses to love you. I suppose the family is different because you're kind of bound by love and family, but your partner gets a special place because they actually choose to keep coming back. But I still believe no one will ever love me as much as my mum loves me. No one cares about my day, even my beloved husband, as much as my dear old mum.
No, I think you're right.
In it.
I think you're right. I actually agree with you. I think my mum would probably say the same thing. I think she'd say you're right there.
It's pretty special. special, that bond, isn't it?
My mother said to me, the only reason I shout at you is because I love you.
Yes.
That's what I say to mine
Got
as
your
well.
best interests
The only
at
reason I
heart.
discipline you, the only reason I go through you, is because I love you.
Yeah.
Very, very
I know.
much.
And I love them the
More
most
than
when they're asleep in
I
bed.
keep saying to
and they
Tom,
can't
there'll be
answer
no
back.
other woman on this planet who will love you as much as I do.
It's
Remember
true.
that.
It's true.
Alex, what about, we've talked about love, what about sorrow? What about saying sorry when it is applied to criminals?
Right, so I was really shocked because I'd never heard of this until this morning, frankly. I mean, someone's going to tell me I'm really silly for not knowing this.
No, I didn't know this either.
Well, there's something called a community resolution that officers can give out to people who have been arrested that basically allows them in some way to apologise for the crime they've committed and get them off scot-free. So rather than having a criminal record or being prosecuted, they're allowed to walk away with nothing, no record whatsoever.
Because the authorities don't want them locked up.
Yes, correct.
They can't afford them, so that's happens there. And Claire, that brings me then to this story that police have given up on punishing shoplifters. I'm just sort of tying both of these in together.
Yes. I mean, what message does that send out?
Well, the same sort of message Alex was saying here.
Ridiculous.
We're actually embarrassed that we've had to apprehend you and maybe do something with you. So if you can get off by saying sorry, or in the case of shoplifting...
Good time to rob a bank, frankly.
Absolutely.
But this goes back to this sort of two-tier system. Do the people who went and got arrested for writing things online, did they get the opportunity to say sorry, or were they banged up straight away? Where is the line here? And this is the question
That's
I'm
a
on
sort
to
of
ask.
political prosecution.
Quite. It's this two-tier justice system that people are talking about. And we're seeing this community resolution has gone up something ridiculous, like 50% in the last 40% since 2019, sorry. And there's people are being let off with sexual crime offences, knife crime offences.
So what is the benchmark then? What is the benchmark?
We don't know.
Is this at magisterial court? Is it at county court?
It's before.
Or just let's not bother and waste time, waste everybody's time.
I mean, where is it? Where
I
is
do
the
think
threshold
with
as well?
Keir Starmer's background as former DPP, and you've also got Timpson in as prisons minister, I do think there is an interesting debate as a society to be had about what the best likelihood of reducing people reoffending, rehabilitation. If there are stats that prove that actually these community orders, which actually have people doing something useful rather than having a criminal record, not getting back into society, if it does seem to be quite as successful, I think it's an interesting debate to be had.
But I would also say that because these people aren't getting a criminal record, it means they can go and work in nurseries and places where people would shouldn't be allowed.
OK, hold that thought. Let us know your views on this one. Get in touch this morning. We'll discuss that next time Alex and Claire are back in the studio, which is going to be about 45 minutes' time. Guys, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Good morning, Craig Schnell with the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A bit of a north-south split across the UK today. Many northern areas seeing some rain, but largely dry and fine further south. So we can see this rainfall first thing this morning across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But for Northern Ireland, it will quickly clear here, so conditions improve as the day goes on. That rain just moving into Cumbria and Wales later on too. And that rain just quite heavy and persistent at times, so some fairly poor travelling conditions, especially across parts of southwestern Scotland. Ahead of it, dry and bright and increasingly warm, could see highs reaching around 25 or 26 degrees in the southeast. So moving into the evening, conditions improve for many parts of Scotland. Some late spells of sunshine around, maybe the odd shower. But for southwestern Scotland and Cumbria, that rain just persisting right throughout the evening. So again, a bit of a difficult commute home here. A few showers also for Northern Ireland, and that rain just beginning to fringe into southwestern England too as we end the day. But for the rest of England, it's a fine end with some late spells of sunshine. Into the evening, that weather front will just move a little bit further eastwards. It starts to weaken as it does so, but still some patchy rain on it as we move through the nighttime period. Either side of it, some clear skies, and for all of us, it's a fairly mild night. Towns and cities staying firmly above double figures. into Wednesday morning, that area of cloud and patchy rain just really lingers across many central parts of the country. Behind it, another spell of rain moving in for Northern Ireland and Scotland. After a little bit of a dry spell, turns wet, unfortunately, again here. But down towards the southeastern parts of England, remaining onto the dry and fine conditions, and increasingly warm. Could see highs reaching around 28 to 29 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A92 is blocked southbound by a fallen tree at Balfarg, causing delays towards Glenrothes. On the M73 in Glasgow, the outside lanes closed northbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 2A from the M8 at Beddiston to the Muirhead turn-off. On the M1 in Nottinghamshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 27 and 28 from Hucknall to the A38. At Alfreton in Derbyshire, the A514 is closed northbound along Osmaston Road in Derby after a fire on Sunday evening. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winson Green is closed for an investigation. In London, the A20 is closed eastbound from Sidcup to the M25, where weekend roadworks have overrun. And the M26 in Kent is taking nearly half an hour in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. The Prime Minister today will vie to bring trust back in politics.
Well, that's despite the growing cronyism row engulfing Downing Street.
Well, Keir Starmer is set to give his first major speech later today ahead of Parliament's return. That's next week.
We'll be speaking to the Labour Party chair, Ellie Reeves, at 8:45.
Definitely, maybe the time has come. Any second now, we will find out whether Oasis are set to reunite.
Tributes flowing for the former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who died yesterday at the age of 76.
Incredibly well thought of as a man and a manager. Tributes from Prince William to David Beckham. David Beckham said, "Thank you for being the person that you've always been, passionate, caring, calm and a true gentleman." Former FA executive Adrian Bevington, who worked with Sven, will join us in about 20 minutes.
Good morning. It's a wet start for some of us this morning, but for others it's going to feel much more like summer today. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
So there we are, just after 8 o'clock. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Oasis, we can tell you, are back in business. Isabel will tell you where.
I think there's a bit of a champagne supernova going on this morning. They have announced their reunion tour 15 years after their split this morning, and they say the guns have fallen silent, the stars have aligned, the great wait is over, come see, it will not be televised. They've announced dates in Cardiff, Manchester, London, Edinburgh and Dublin, and they say it will be their only shows in Europe next year. They start in July in Cardiff and they end... there's a bunch in Wembley in the middle, and they end in Dublin on the 17th of August. So too much anticipation. All those rumours proved to be true. The boys have buried the hatchet and are going back out on the road.
It's basically what 400 million could do, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Let's go to Mick Wall. Mick's a music journalist with his view and his thoughts on all of this. Mick, good morning to you.
Hi, guys.
Hello. Are you excited?
I think that might be overstating it. It's kind of like the worst kept secret in the world, isn't it? To be honest with you, they've been talking about this. I first heard about this 5 years ago, when at that point their two most famous albums were coming up to their 25th or were on their 25th anniversary, the first one. And then, of course, COVID hit. And the world changed and everything went away and now it's coming back. So I've been talking about them getting back at some point as a sort of inevitability for a long, long time. So excitement, no, but yes, great to see them back. I mean, they're one of the all-time brilliant British rock and roll bands. And just like the Rolling Stones, or The Who, or all these huge monster bands, there is just a whole generation of people that never saw them, weren't there first time around to buy all those great hit records, but they've grown up reading about them, seeing the DVDs, looking at the stuff online, and they're just going to be so excited to go and see them. And we live in the era of classic lineups getting back together. And it doesn't matter that it's, as long as you've got Liam and Noel, you've got Oasis. None of the other original members are involved. But then, you know, in the Rolling Stones, there's only Mick Jagger and Keith Richards from the original lineup. Same with The Who, it's only Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend. The Sex Pistols have just been doing fantastic business here, and they don't even have Johnny Rotten singing for them anymore. So it's Liam and Noel. It always was the Liam and Noel show, and it will be something to see. I'm absolutely sure, yeah.
I never knew that Oasis was anything more than Noel and Liam.
No, I didn't. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's really mainly Liam, but with a little bit of Noel in the background. But can Liam keep his mouth shut? The world's moved on from the 1990s, where he was, you know, effing and blinding and flicking the V sign at the cameras. The youngsters won't stand for any of that these days.
Oh, I don't know. I think the youngsters will always love a bit of flicking V signs and swearing and bad behaviour. No, I think I very much hope he does do all that, because it'd be disappointing if he came out like Elton John, you know, and sort of loving everybody and wishing everybody a fond farewell at the end of the show. No, I want them to be as bad as possible. You know, we don't want Oasis to come out and be nice and safe and all that boring stuff. They were never that. That was Blur. You know, Oasis are the other end of the spectrum. So we want them to come out and we want them to be rock and roll stars, which is what the whole trip was always about for them. And the brothers just bring that element of unpredictability, which you do not get with the Stones or the Who or any of the other big boys that get back together.
And just how good do you think they were? You know, the number of times I've been at events where someone's just started singing Wonderwall, for example, and the crowd just suddenly starts singing it. I mean, do you rate them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it so happened they came along at a time in Britain where the Labour government was about to come in and we had this whole Cool Britannia thing. But the fact is, they would have made it at any era in music from the 60s to today. You know, cream always rises to the top, and the ace they always had in their sleeve was the brothers. Noel wrote absolutely terrific songs, you know, especially on those first two albums. And Liam was the best frontman this country had seen probably since Johnny Rotten. Absolutely dynamite. I saw them live a few times. I also was there at Top of the Pops when they did Roll With It. There was no division between the people you saw on stage and the ones that you saw off stage. They were exactly who they were. They were entirely authentic. And of course, that meant trouble sometimes. And like I say, it's so rare in the music business, particularly these days where everything is formatted, streamed, everything down to the last second is on tech now. They all perform to hard drive, as we say. I think these guys will come along and burst that bubble in their own unique way, and God bless them for it.
Thanks, Mick. Really appreciate your take on things. Music journalist Mick Wall there. Thank you very much. And just to recap on what we've just heard, Oasis have announced a run of 14 shows in Britain and Ireland. That's going to be next summer. It'll be July and August in Cardiff, Manchester, London, Edinburgh, finishing up in Dublin.
Yeah.
And those will be their only shows in Europe next year.
Yeah, they're saying tickets go on sale this Saturday at 8 a.m. in Ireland, 9 a.m. in the UK, and they include 2 nights in Cardiff, 4 nights in Heaton Park in Manchester, 4 at Wembley in London, 2 nights in Edinburgh, and then 2 nights in Dublin. No mention, it's worth saying, of Glastonbury. We all got a little bit ahead of ourselves there. There was lots of speculation about what they were going to be announcing, but not headlining the Pyramid stage just yet, but never say never. Although, actually, this tour comes just after Glastonbury, doesn't it? So it would be a bit of a sort of rain on their parade if they did Glasto before this. So it doesn't look like Glastonbury 25 anyway. Never know, maybe 26 if the tour goes well. But I for one, am pleased to see them back. I think it'll be great.
I would say Glastonbury's more where you end up as opposed to where you're going to start afresh from again. Right, so that's Oasis done. We talk politics now. The Prime Minister's pledged to bring trust back ahead of a speech to the country later this morning.
Yeah, he's going to be preparing us a bit more for things to get worse, as he's been saying, before they get better. And he's saying that next week's return to Parliament will not be business as usual.
All of this comes as the Prime Minister faces pressure over accusations of cronyism, Conservatives demanding an investigation into recent civil service appointments.
Well, let's speak now to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who joins us now. This has been so heavily trailed, hasn't it? Keir Starmer writing in The Times this morning, talking about restoring trust in politics, whilst everybody else is talking about glasses for passes. Can he really sell that argument when he's being accused of cronyism?
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Well, yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, there is this ongoing row about cronyism. Effectively, a number of civil service appointments that have been made by people that were previously very closely connected with the Labour Party. And then, of course, the donor, who it turns out had a pass to number 10, having given £500,000 to Labour over the previous years, including some £20,000 to give Sir Keir Starmer something of a new look with glasses and clothes, etc. During the election campaign. Now, Labour have said there is nothing to see here, that pass was temporary. They don't think he has it even anymore. But the Conservatives saying this doesn't smell right and asking for an investigation. But Sir Keir Starmer is trying to get back on the front foot, basically, ahead of Parliament coming back next week, trying to get the narrative back on their terms and saying, look, we can't go on like we did under the Conservatives. We'll talk about rooting out 14 years of rot, as he says. And I think the choice of the Rose Garden is interesting because it'll be a speech 10 o'clock this morning in front of journalists, yes, but also in front of 50 members of the public that he met on the campaign trail, people like apprentices, teachers, small business owners, etc. But he's going to remind us, as I think Labour are going to do over and over and over again, that things are not working, many people would say, in this country because of the legacy that Labour have inherited. And the Rose Garden, the scene of the crime, if you like, to many people, will remind us that under the Conservatives, Dominic Cummings held that press conference having broken lockdown rules in the first lockdown, going all the way to Durham when he had COVID. Also, parties in Downing Street, in the Downing Street garden when all of us were locked down. So I think quite a politically savvy choice. But yes, the issue of trust, Labour painting themselves as coming along to clean up politics, I think it is a bit tricky with all the allegations of various appointments.
Twitter, actually, with all this Oasis stuff going on, my eyes are glued to it. And I've just seen Keir Starmer post saying, 2 months ago, I stood on these steps, promised you a government of public service. Watch my speech live here from 10 o'clock. And I'm just looking at the comments, Catherine. The first one I see underneath. Hi, Sir Keir, do you know anyone who would buy me a couple of suits and some glasses? Happy to give them a front door key in exchange. So is it all, really?
Just explain to people.
Yeah,
apparently he has his glasses and his suits sponsored or bought for him.
Yes.
Yes, this is Lord Ali, this donor that's given a lot of money, who we're told had a pass to come to meetings in Number 10. Of course, it's not essential if you're just coming for occasional meetings to actually have a pass. So I think it is very tricky. And of course, Labour have sold themselves as being coming along to clean up politics, saying, look at those rotten Tories. And of course, they got this big majority, not because there's some wild enthusiasm for Sir Keir Starmer particularly, or what Labour have to offer, but largely because so many people were really, really cross with the Conservatives. So I think they are going to have to be careful with this. And some people are going to think it's all a bit rich.
Okay. Thanks, Catherine. Leave it there. Time 13 minutes now past 8 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. A look at some other stories coming into the newsroom.
Residents of an East London block of flats engulfed by what they call a nightmare fire say they've lost everything. Everyone's been accounted for and no injuries reported after a major incident was declared following that fire in Dagenham. More than 100 people were evacuated from the building. 2 were taken to hospital.
Notting Hill Carnival is wrapped up. 5 people stabbed, 230 arrested yesterday. That comes after 3 people were stabbed on Sunday, including a 32-year-old mother who's in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day only.
From today, the NHS 111 helpline will offer mental health support to adults and children in crisis. Local health systems previously had their own separate phone lines, which took about 200,000 calls a month. It makes the NHS in England one of the first countries to offer such a support service for mental health issues, as well as for physical problems.
I wonder what those mental health calls will do to the overall service. Will they slow up the 111 system?
Interesting, yeah. Are they going to have more people answering calls?
Yeah, I just wonder the way it is. I mean, I personally, I don't think they're doing anything for the mental health service. They're simply taking it from one section and putting it on another phone line. What they're not doing so far is increasing the amount of staff facilities that they have, and the wait is far too long for people seeking help mentally for that. Let us know your view. Maybe you're one of those people. gbnews.com/your say.
In the meantime, temperatures set to soar again this week. Craig Snell with all the details.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A bit of a north-south split across the UK today. Many northern areas seeing some rain, but largely dry and fine further south. So we can see this rainfall first thing this morning across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But for Northern Ireland, it will quickly clear here, so conditions improve as the day goes on. That rain just moving into Cumbria and Wales later on too. And that rain just quite heavy and persistent at times, so some fairly poor travelling conditions, especially across parts of southwestern Scotland. Ahead of it, dry and bright and increasingly warm, could see highs reaching around 25 or 26 degrees in the southeast. So moving into the evening, conditions improve for many parts of Scotland. Some late spells of sunshine around, maybe the odd shower. But for southwestern Scotland and Cumbria, that rain just persisting right throughout the evening. So again, a bit of a difficult commute home here. A few showers also for Northern Ireland, and that rain just beginning to fringe into southwestern England too as we end the day. But for the rest of England, it's a fine end with some late spells of sunshine. Into the evening, that weather front will just move a little bit further eastwards. It starts to weaken as it does so, but still some patchy rain on it as we move through the nighttime period. Either side of it, some clear skies, and for all of us, it's a fairly mild night. Towns and cities staying firmly above double figures. Into Wednesday morning, that area of cloud and patchy rain just really lingers across many central parts of the country. Behind it, another spell of rain moving in for Northern Ireland and Scotland. So after a little bit of a drier spell, turns wet, unfortunately, again here. But down towards the southeastern parts of England, remaining onto the dry and fine conditions, and increasingly warm. Could see highs reaching around 28 to 29 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
So here we are on a Tuesday, just 3 days away from Friday, and Friday's a big day because of the Great British Giveaway.
Yes, and the deadline is at 5 o'clock on Friday for your chance to win £30,000. That is the most we've done this year. Make sure you've entered. Here are all the details of how that cash could be yours.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
After the break, Sven has gone. We're paying more tributes.
We are. Adrian Bevington, FA executive, worked with Sven very closely while he was the manager of England. We'll talk to him about Sven very shortly.
OK, we'll do that indeed right after this very short break.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
A new exhibition at Gainsborough's house in Sudbury in Suffolk is the first to chart the artistic careers of Cedric Morris, who lived from 1889 to 1982, and Arthur Haynes, who lived from 1894 to 1978. They were partners in love and art for 60 years. I'm joined now by the exhibition curator, Dr. Pat Hardy. Some people will not be in the least bit familiar with these two British artists. So do you want to say a word of background about Cedric Morris and Arthur Haynes?
About 100 artworks were left in 2017 of Cedric Morris's works. And it was felt then that an exhibition to showcase that work would be very appealing to the public. Morris's flower paintings have had a lot of traction. They've become very popular commercially, and there's been more research done on them. So it was felt that it would be good to broaden out the flower painter aspects of Morris's work to showcase the portraits and the landscapes and protest paintings, which we now had in the collection. And it was also thought important that his partner, as you mentioned, for 60 years, Let Haynes, was also given some profile because he very much fell away into the shadows because he was promoting Morris's work and running the school, which was set up nearby, near Sudbury, near Gainsborough's house at Hadley, which was a very different type of art school. And a lot of people, both artists and locals, do remember it having been in operation and how wild it was and how bohemian they were. So it's felt to be a good story in personal terms, but also artistically to try and place these two, particularly Morris, in the 20th century art world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A lot of nice, kind tributes about Sven-Göran Eriksson, and he seems to be very well liked.
Yeah, he really does, doesn't he? And the thing that I keep mentioning is that we talked about this back in January when he announced that he had the illness and that he knew that he had less than a year to live. And so many tributes are coming in then, and obviously the tributes are coming in today as well. The new film, which is out, which is a documentary about his life, that's only came out last week. And he was supposed to be there at the premiere earlier on last week. Yeah. His family was there, but for obvious reasons he wasn't. And yeah, it is very sad, but I've always heard very good things. Everybody seems to say good things about Sven.
Well, let's see what former FA executive Adrian Bevington has to say about him. Adrian, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, guys.
How did you get on with the man?
He was a wonderful person. He was just a privilege to work with. He had such a positive impact on my life and career personally. His calmness, he was a really erudite individual, and he made people who worked with him or were around him feel good because of the way that he conducted himself.
So how closely did you work with him, Adrian, for those that don't know what your role was alongside him?
Well, for the vast bulk of his time as the England coach, I was often the person who was around him, around media conferences, and then increasingly over time, just day-to-day activities, and a very small group of people who would be involved in the planning and operation around the whole structure of the England team operation, shall we say. So, whenever there was a crisis, and there was one or two over that period of time, I would often be the person who would be first to receiving the calls and then have to try and manage the situations with him.
And how did he respond? I mean, we know about the different crises that he had in his personal life, shall we say, which is extremely well documented, and the press were all over him a lot. How did he deal with those situations as far as you were concerned? Because obviously you were the one that was making the call, because he always seemed extremely calm throughout everything.
That was the beauty of the man. He had just this ability to laugh and smile his way through situations when most of us would be, really struggling or getting extremely tetchy or, going to other extremes. He just had a serenity about him, both insofar as when you had to put a very delicate, private, personal matter to him, on a Saturday evening, shall we say, when the Sunday newspapers were coming out. Or, after getting knocked out of a European Championship quarter-final on penalties, we went together to the referees' room afterwards, and I thought, wow, we might see a bit of reaction here, and he went in, thanked them for their performance, shook all their hands and wished them well. Don't think any other coach would do that in those circumstances.
Yeah. What do you think he wasn't able to do, Adrian, when you look at the achievements and the big tournaments, quarter-final stages, maybe a bit disappointing there. Why didn't it go right on the pitch for him?
It's a really fair question, Eamonn, and the reality was we just couldn't quite get across the line during that period. I do think we were very close in 2004, and had Wayne Rooney not broke his foot when we were 1-0 up in the quarter-final and he was the player of that tournament, I do believe that's the one that we would have gone on to achieve success. Other times, we can all discuss the tactics, the selections. He did have a wonderful squad of players, particularly a first 12 to 14 group of players that he could pick from, but for whatever reason he couldn't get across the line. But he did face a great Brazil side in 2002, which is often forgotten, and ultimately the Portuguese side that he had still did contain some very good players too. But that will always be the discussion point. We couldn't quite get there with the golden generation, as it's always going to be tagged.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, but he was the first foreign manager, wasn't he, for England? That obviously, I'm laughing at the newspapers here. I mean, The Sun have a headline today saying, a true gent of the game. He sold plenty of copies for them. They weren't always saying that about him, but basically, they weren't treating him like a true gent of the game. He was a foreigner, he was an outsider, he was a risk.
It was a very divisive appointment when it was made back in late 2000, obviously. Total sea change. David Dean, Adam Crozier, David Davis, they were all very instrumental in bringing Sven into the England job. But I worked with a number of England coaches, and he was equally as proud as an English person to have that job. And because of his manner, despite the vast criticism he got from different people on his appointment or various occasions, often because of his personal life rather than results, he just was able to carry himself with that warmth and dignity. He had a real charisma, quiet charisma. Didn't say a great deal, quiet charisma, and because of that, he won an enduring friendship and respect and admiration from most of his critics as time evolved.
I'd spoken to him about it in the past, but how do you think he looked back, especially straight after what happened with England? Was he bitter about the end of it? You were around at the time. Was he upset about the way things ended? Because we also mentioned how successful as a manager he was, but just couldn't get it working with England. Did it upset him?
He was never someone who dwelt on the negatives. He was clearly very practical in his attitude that, in 2006, he felt that we had a team that could win the World Cup and should have been capable of winning the World Cup. So that was undoubtedly underperformance and disappointment. He was upset by the manner in which he lost his job with the England team because of the undercover report on him when he was over in Dubai in the January of 2006, which then led to the FA to dismiss him shortly afterwards before the World Cup, and that's something that did upset him, because I think when speaking to him, he felt that to a degree undermined his ability as a coach and a manager of that group of players going into the tournament.
Look, Adrian, appreciate that. Look, a very interesting take from a man who was there at the time. As Sven said, Adrian, don't be sorry, smile about his life.
Absolutely.
It's been fantastic. So we'll all smile today. What a guy, what a man, a true gent. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Do you think things have changed as far as the press concerned? If he was the manager now and everything that happened 20 years ago, that things would be different now, or do you think it'd be the same thing?
Same thing.
You think so?
Still
go after him?
Of course they would. I had the bloomin' Sun last week follow me into a cafe, right? And then reporting on what I bought, on how much I paid for it in the cafe.
You the next England manager?
And what would they say about me? Not a true gent of a man, anyway.
I'll be your Steve McLaren. I'll tell you, it'll work great.
No, I think these newspapers they're so two-faced, they're so scurrilous, and this news that they put online, which is just clickbait. They'll put anything on. They had me. Apparently, I was in tears on the programme yesterday. If it was, I forgot that. I didn't remember that bit at all. but according to the Daily Express. But you know what? Rubbish. And people, it's either written by people who are not good enough to know anything, or it's written...
Pernicious, I think.
Or else malicious, you know?
Malicious.
It's incredible. Anyway, you can believe us. Thank you very much, Paul. Still to come.
We're going to take a look at what's making the news with Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon. Don't go anywhere.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A92 is blocked southbound by a fallen tree at Alfarg, causing delays towards Glenrothes. There's a reduced Northern Rail service heading south out of Carlisle to Barrow-in-Furness because of a faulty train. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winson Green is closed for an investigation. On the M25 in Essex, 2 lanes are closed anti-clockwise where a car's overturned at junction 28 for the A12, with queues back beyond junction 29 for the A127. In London, Victoria embankments closed each way by Temple Station after an accident. There are queues on approaches to there. And also in London, the A20 is closed eastbound from Sidcup to the M25, where weekend roadworks have overrun. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking nearly half an hour, and queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Right, we're taking a look at what is making the news this morning with the political commentator Alex Armstrong and the broadcaster and friend of the programme, Claire Muldoon. And Claire, you have the big news this morning.
We do. It's
the last
fantastic
hour.
news. 14 dates have just been announced because Oasis are reuniting after 15 years of torment and, you know, slagging matches between both brothers. And this is a big news and it's wonderful news because I think it's great.
It was never Blur versus Oasis for you. It was more Noel versus Liam.
versus Liam. And Liam, my goodness me,
he's your number one.
Really good-looking
stud muffin.
He's just oozing it. We were at a girls' lunch, I think, 20-odd years ago, and we were sitting in Nobu, and he was with Nicole Appleton at the time. Not one of us could actually take our eyes off him.
Really?
He's just got something.
Yeah, I can believe it.
He really... It's not
Bad
just
manners,
the swagger.
that's what he's got.
No,
Bad
it's
manners,
not just the swagger. It's the look, it's the whole... Well, I would say he's charm personified, actually.
Oh, my gosh, look at you getting giddy.
Your taste in men is clearly absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, well, I do have an ex, so I suppose you're right, yes. He was a bit horrendous, but anyway, horrific.
But it's interesting because they're saying that this could be worth 500 million. I'm just looking at various commentators on social media. There's an agent that we know on here saying that ticket sales, sponsorship, merchandise, filming, PRs, that will gross well north of 400 million. And he says says that as dates grow, this could become the quickest-selling tour in history.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'd love to get my hands on some tickets as well. I'm sure a lot of people will be. I wouldn't be surprised if they add more dates, frankly.
I hope so.
Because I think 14 days is not going to be enough, is it? Really, 14 days
it's not.
Well, that gets them off to a starting
point,
work out what to do.
And also, is there a political statement in there? We won't be doing any European dates. Are they being Brexiteers?
Maybe. or maybe they just don't want to...
Can't be arsed.
Can't be bothered, yeah. It sounds probably more accurate.
I think
why?
find,
they'll come to them.
Given the parameters of the dates, I think you'll find they've bookended extra days that could possibly be released for more dates.
Yeah, I agree. But there is problems with British bands touring in Europe and European
that's true.
bands touring in the UK. There's extra taxes and things to pay.
Really?
Well, I mean, I don't think that's really the forefront of their minds. I don't think money really is an issue for either of them.
Well, I think it's probably motivated.
Do you think so?
Yes,
I was going to say,
Liam's just had, by the way, a very expensive divorce back on the market. So he's got to pay for that. Oh, is that Noel that's had the expensive divorce? Oh, right, OK. So he's got to pay for that. 23 million or something he's got to pay her.
I was going to ask, I mean, what's the reason for it? It must be money, right? I mean, this is a moneymaker. This is a huge moneymaker for them, right?
There's no one got a voice like Liam Gallagher with his hands behind his back.
But they're not getting back in the studio.
My goodness me, when they're not behind his back, he's banging away that tambourine.
Oh, Claire, I've never seen you like this before.
Date, actually, because they were... Paul McGee founded them in Glasgow, in King Tut's. Wow,
they should be in Glasgow.
So they really ought to have played in Glasgow.
What would happen to you if that
Whenever
happened?
they're going on tour, get Claire off air for a couple of weeks. She'll be gone. She'll be a hot mess.
I've never seen it. Oh my goodness! I need some.
What have I come into today, honestly?
Oh dear! Oh dear! Oh dear! I don't know where to go with that. Let's talk about. Well, I was going to give you a breather for a minute there. Let's talk about Terminator-style killer robots.
Yeah.
Just to...
we might need one of those robots to look after Claire after this. So we've got AI robots. Terminator's back, everybody. It's real. Terminator is real, right?
Says the Star. Hang on, everyone.
Right.
Says the Star.
Well, apparently this is
I don't know why you always keep slagging the Star. The best stories of the morning are in the Star.
They might be most entertaining, but they're not.
They don't tell any more lies than the Daily Mail tells.
Well, that's true.
Or the Sun
true,
tells.
Eamonn. That's true. And this is a real story. This is real. So I'm not making this up. The Terminator exists and is already being deployed in parts of Africa, supposedly. Yeah. This has set the United Nations into complete meltdown. The Human Rights Watch also in complete meltdown. And these robots are able to kill people on their own authority without a human directive. So again, the UN are calling for this to be stopped immediately because if it gets out of control, you know, where does it end? But I think it's quite shocking to think this is where policing might actually lead in the future if we're not careful. We don't say, actually, we reject this. I reject that. I think policing should always be done by humans. Wars is maybe a different story.
This is artificial intelligence that we all fear and we all talk about.
Yeah.
But you say you would object to policing being carried out by robots.
Yeah.
But what about warfare? If these were troops on the ground, would you object?
But the thing is, how do you win with robots? That's the question.
Well, I think you'd win quite easily.
Do you think so? Yeah. But then the robots have to kill people, surely, to win. Just destroying other robots would surely just make this stalemate. I don't know. I haven't even really thought about it, but it all sounds very Star Warsy, doesn't it?
It's very dystopian as well.
Very dystopian.
I mean, if you
But there is an exhibition going on at the moment. Is it in China? For the dogs?
That's right.
The robot dogs. They were frightening.
And they've got the human ones. Did you see those? The human ones are even more. They're even more terrifying. The facial expressions they've got now are insane. So we know this is coming. We've got, obviously, Elon Musk building his own robot. He said that will be out in the next couple of decades.
Maybe Elon Musk is a robot.
He might. Well,
a
lot of them might be,
you could turn the power off if that was the case. I mean, isn't it 30-50 or something that they're going to turn on us? What's the that's when?
I can't remember what the Terminator. I think we've passed the Terminator date, the one that you predicted. The right predicted. Sorry.
But look, modern day warfare, they're using a perversion of robots anyway in the fact of drones.
That's right.
Because we can't, forget that either. I mean, these are Amazon and other big shopping companies were going to use drones to drop shopping into people's areas as well, instead of using up the whole van thing. I think we should not be sceptical of this. It is happening, and either we get on board with it and try and tame it, or we get on board with it and try and understand it, or I'm afraid we are going to be hit with something like
just feels like politicians and institutions globally are so far behind. You know, they're so far behind on this stuff, and we're playing catch up.
They always will be, though. It's just the nature of it. Can we talk about singing? Because it's the 60th anniversary today of Mary Poppins, and we've been talking about Julie Andrews all day. And you've got a story, Claire, also from the Star, but talking about the benefits of singing.
Apparently, the eggheads, who are boffins, have reckoned that belting out Amazing Grace can stop heart attacks. They also ranked the Beatles' Hey Jude as one of the top pop tunes to sing if you want to battle cardiac conditions. And they study the impact of singing a range of songs on blood vessels of older people with cardiac diseases. Boffins recruited 65 men and women, mostly in their 60s, who were either undergoing treatment for heart troubles or had previously suffered a heart attack. And they saw an amazing 22% benefit and blood flow in people who were belting out hymns like Amazing Grace, like everything else, and I think that's just lovely. I really do.
I do like belting out a hymn from time to time.
What's your favourite one?
Oh gosh, I've got so many favourites. Be Still for the presence of the Lord. That's quite a nice one. It's not very Catholic, which is weird for me to come out with.
My favourite one, which isn't actually as a Catholic, is Jerusalem. I think
I love Jerusalem as well, yeah.
Makes us...
I was listening to Radio 2 late one night, and there was a live rendition, I think it was from the Albert Hall, and it was a rendition of Hey Jude, live, by Rick Astley. Absolutely
brilliant.
Magnificent.
Aye.
What a voice that guy.
He's still got it as well, hasn't he? It's a brilliant voice he's got. All these years later, you'd expect him not to have the... But he's got it.
He played a set in Glastonbury of Smith songs, and they were absolutely phenomenal. He is amazing.
Yeah.
And you know what they say? He's never going to give you up. He's never going to let you down.
I don't know what they've put in your drinks today, Claire. But whatever you're having, I want some. That's for sure.
Guys, we've got to take a break. Hang around with us. We're going to be speaking to the chair of the Labour Party, that's Ellie Reeves, ahead of whatever Keir Starmer has to say. The big speech happening at 10 o'clock. So we're speaking to her right after this short break. Please join us.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Prince Harry says we need to be more cautious when adopting artificial intelligence.
Yes. AI is scary. And I think a lot of people are scared and uncertain. And I think one of the solutions to that is education and awareness, because it's becoming harder and harder to stem the flow from the source, and therefore really it comes down to all of us to be able to spot the true from the fake.
Well, that was a whole load of nothing, wasn't it?
Wisdom.
Yes, we're going to get the thoughts now of former royal correspondent at The Sun, Charles Ray.
Well, I have to say, I actually agree with Harry and anyone else who says that we have to be cautious about things that appear on social media.
Disinformation and fake news is a controversial topic because who is the ultimate arbiter of truth and fact?
So do you trust Harry to determine?
Well, I don't trust Harry to determine that, no.
They never actually say what they want, though, in terms of social media and things. I mean, do they actually have an idea of what the online media landscape should look like? I mean, there's clearly a veiled attack on Elon Musk and the like, but do they just want anything nasty off there? Do they just want things that, you know, are then proven to be untrue at some point off there? You know, it's easy to stand and say, I want the online world to be safer and it to be less nasty and for there to be less untruths on there. Yeah. It's much more difficult, as we found out in this country and every other country, to actually work out what the policy looks like.
You're absolutely right, Emily, that it's all very well everybody jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, we've got to clamp down on social media. Like, I'm suggesting that as well. But, you know, they haven't come up with any solution to it, any program to make it safer and healthier for people to use.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's talk to Alex and Claire now about Keir Starmer and what he's going to say at 10 o'clock. Alex, this is front page of the Daily Telegraph today. And how difficult a task has he got?
Extremely difficult, I believe, especially as the first sort of 50 or so days haven't seemed to have gone so well. Not off to a great start. You've had the riots, we've had the fuel winter payments being cut for pensioners, we've had inflation going back up, energy prices on the rise, and obviously he's had to cancel his holiday, rightfully so, because the country is in an absolute state. Now, Starmer's going to be doing this big address today at 10 a.m. We don't really know what this is all about, because there doesn't seem to be any major announcements. It seems to be more performative.
Well, to use a phrase from Dad's army, we're doomed. That seems to be what he's saying.
Yes, well, we're here. He's going to say there's tough decisions that need to be made, which indicates something that reminds me of what the David Cameron and Nick Clegg Rose Garden speech, where they said there will be tough austerity measures that we need to get the country back on track. But you know. What can they do? There's no money left. Rising taxes are already at all-time highs. People are struggling, and
they definitely don't necessarily have to give a 22% pay rise to junior doctors or 15% to ASLEF with no strings attached. Well, I mean, a lot of people will say that. What can they do? The hands are tied. Well, perhaps negotiate.
That's true.
Over some of those issues.
And of course, he's saying today that Downing Street's back in public service and is going to be all about the people. But we've already seen these cronyism sort of allegations at the party for letting a donor in, who donated hundreds of thousands of pounds. You've had Tulip Siddiqui, who is obviously also broke ministerial code within the first few weeks. So these sorts of things, people don't forget it. So how can you take someone on face value who's already had scandals and said he was going to clean up his party and there'd be zero tolerance? It seems like there's more than enough tolerance.
When does Parliament reconvene?
Next
Monday.
Week.
This coming Monday?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, you just wonder what... I think this is performative, I really do.
I agree.
I think this is Starmer's, advised comms guys, his bads or whoever, saying go out into that garden and just give the people what you think they actually want. You've given everyone else what they want, let's be honest. And let's just try and
pretend the last few weeks haven't happened.
I think they're very worried about the budget at the end of October, and they're trying to do the opposite of what Liz Truss did. And, she was always accused of not laying the ground enough. They are literally rolling the turf out, pouring it out days in advance.
And let me say...
no one can say that.
It's fake turf they're rolling out.
Yeah.
It's not real stuff. It really isn't.
I agree with you. I don't believe a word. If he's going to stand there and tell us it's all much worse than he thought, we all knew how bad it was going to be. What this is about is I'm going to introduce taxes that I didn't really tell you about either.
I agree with
big
you,
business or us. That's what it's about. So it's not about him being concerned for us or the situation that the country's in. Yeah. Anyway, right now, we're going to find out from the chair of the Labour Party, Ellie Reeves, what she thinks it's all about as she joins us now. Ellie, 10 o'clock is kick-off, and we're just trying to say, what is the purpose of all this? Why is this, what the Prime Minister's going to say? Why has it been leaked from Saturday, Sunday, Monday? He hasn't even spoken, and yet it's out everywhere today. What is this all about today?
Well, the Prime Minister will be making a speech later this morning about fixing the foundations of the country. Under the last Conservative government, we saw sticking plaster politics, papering over the cracks, but not really dealing with the fundamental issues facing the country. And what the Prime Minister is going to do today is talk about the need for fixing the foundations. And he's going to be honest with the public. There's a £22 billion black hole in the country's finances, which we only found out about when we got into government just 8 weeks ago. There's also a societal black hole. You know, things like the male prison estate operating at 99% capacity because the previous Conservative government failed to get to grips with the crisis in our justice system. So in his speech today, the Prime Minister is going to be level with the public and say, you know, there isn't a short-term solution. It will take time. There is a huge amount that we need
solution.
to do to
You're
get
the government.
things back
You can
on
do whatever you
course.
want. He could levy a windfall tax on the excessive profits that supermarkets are making or that utility companies are making. Of course, there's a short-term fix. It's just whether he's prepared to do it or not.
Well, we got into government 8 weeks ago, and in that time we have already done a number of things to get us started on that programme of national renewal. For example, setting up Great British Energy so that we can lead the drive in moving to homegrown renewable energy, achieving our net zero targets, but also bringing bills down for people, ending the effective ban on onshore wind, starting the discussions with the NHS to get those 40,000 more NHS procedures in place each week, which we talked about during the election campaign, beginning the campaign to recruit 6,500 more teachers and making work pay through our New Deal for working people. It has been a really busy summer of work trying to get started with these measures that will benefit people. But what the Prime Minister is going to do today is say, look, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. We've had 14 years of decline under the Conservatives. We will fix things, but it's not going to happen overnight.
So he's just been given 5 years, but he's saying he wants 10, and he's standing there saying that he wants us all to trust him, but in the same breath as saying that he had no idea how bad the public finances were, he's given 15% to ASLEF Union with no strings attached, and everybody will be scratching their heads thinking, well, how on earth can we afford that? And 22% to junior doctors when you say we're skint.
Well, the 15% is a deal across 3 years. But look, you know, your viewers would have spent years dealing with this industrial unrest, not being able to get to work on time because the trains aren't running, having their hospital appointments cancelled because of industrial
aren't they? They came straight out and said there'll be further strikes.
Didn't take steps to resolve. But the previous government didn't get to grips with this, and it had a huge impact on people's lives. So it's absolutely right that one of the first things that we did, in 4 weeks, we achieved what the previous government couldn't do in 4 years. We have ended those disputes, and we will get our country back on track.
OK, well, we'll see if you have ended those. But I just want to focus a bit more on this issue of trust, because it is a bit rich, isn't it, to be making so much of standing in the Rose Garden. We all know all the history, recent history surrounding that, when actually already in this last 8 weeks of power, you're already as a party embroiled in lots of allegations of cronyism and indeed passes for glasses. Can you explain to us how on earth Wahid Ali was able to get his hands on a parliamentary pass and into Downing Street?
Well, I'm not involved in the process of handing out passes,
so you can't tell
as I'm sure you will know. But as I understand it, Lord Ali, who is a respected and long-serving Labour peer, had a pass to Downing Street for a short number of weeks following the general election. He doesn't have that pass now. All proper processes were followed, and all rules were followed.
Yeah, well, I want to pick up on the issue of trust, because, again, the ground's being laid, your sister very much making it clear, the Chancellor, that, you know, there'll be no tax rises for working people. It's what you campaigned on, even though the IFS said that wasn't strictly true. And they're right, aren't they? Because we're all going to see our taxes increase, because you're not going to be unfreezing those tax thresholds. So if you kind of stand there and talk about trust, isn't it time for the Labour Party to be completely honest with us?
Well, we set out our tax lock at the general election and have recommitted to it since then. There won't be any rises to income tax, national insurance or VAT. That was the commitment that we gave to people during the election, and we'll stick to it. But look, I'm not going to preempt what's in the budget. That's for the Chancellor to set out, and will set out on the 30th of October.
OK. Ellie Reeves, thank you very much indeed for previewing all of that for us. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes.
We got Claire and Alex in the studio listening to all of that. Well, what did you think?
Well, I don't think they have got everything back on track, literally and metaphorically, because LNER, which are state-owned, are saying that our conditions haven't been addressed. The pay has, they've accepted that, and that's that. The NHS will not be sorted by giving junior doctors the price increment over 3 years like she said they have. That's not going to solve waiting lists.
Yeah.
That's not going to solve people's ability to use the service as it's supposed to be used for. And it's just rhetoric, and it's just on and on and on and on.
It's farcical,
50 days,
isn't it?
51 days of absolute farce and distrust.
Yeah. I think that was entirely farcical. Listening to it, I'm just shaking my head thinking, well, you're saying we've solved the strikes. They would just announce more. You're saying that we've solved cronyism. Well, you've just had 8 weeks of cronyism, so to speak. And for Keir Starmer to go out in the Rose Garden today and make this statement, I think is a slap in the face to British people who are going to be looking at him going, what are you on about? Why don't you just get on with the job and stop making these ridiculous performative statements to the British public? We've already seen enough of him on national TV, and get on with it, rather than saying, I'm going to fix everything.
He made a very good speech. I mean, when he was appointed to Downing Street outside Number 10, he talked about restoring the nation's trust in politics. The question is, will he be able to do that today? Will you believe him? Back after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A92 is blocked southbound by a fallen trip Alfarg, affecting traffic heading towards Glen Rothes. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is partly blocked southbound where a vehicle caught fire just before junction 11 at Poneal, causing queues. Now there's a reduced rail service heading south from Carlisle to Barrow and Furness because of a faulty train. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winson Green is closed for an investigation. The M25 in Essex is blocked anti-clockwise where a car overturned at junction 28 for the A12, with queues halfway back to junction 30 for the A13. In London, Victoria Embankment's closed after an accident by Temple Station, and the A20's closed eastbound out of London from Criddles Corner to the M25, where weekend roadworks have overrun. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed where someone's broken down on the westbound entry slip road at junction 5, the Southampton airport, causing delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The Prime Minister vows to bring trust back to politics.
But will he? That's despite the growing cronyism now engulfing Downing Street.
As Sir Keir Starmer is set to give his first major speech later today ahead of Parliament's return next week.
Definitely maybe. Oasis have reunited and are set to tour next year. 14 concerts. They will be in Edinburgh, Manchester, Cardiff, London and Dublin.
Tributes flowing for the former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who died yesterday at the age of 76.
Good morning. It's a wet start for some of us this morning, but for others, it's going to feel much more like summer today. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
You're tuned in to GB News Breakfast. A very good morning to you, wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast. Lots of talk about Oasis everywhere. Social media is awash with it. The tickets go on sale on Saturday. Will you be trying to get your hands on some? Let us know this morning. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. I'd quite like to. I quite like the nostalgia. So you don't want to say, will you be trying to get your hands on tickets? You want to be saying, have you got your hands on tickets and can you send some my way? That's okay, that's what I should be doing, touting for some, yeah. Mm-hmm. But, they were a period in time, weren't they? Britpop was a big thing and it's quite fun to see them come back together. Have they still got it? Can they still do it in the same way?
They support City.
Oh, you just can't get over that.
Can't get over it. Can't get over it. To politics, and the Prime Minister has pledged to bring trust back ahead of his speech to the nation, and that is going to happen 10 o'clock in the Rose Garden at Downing Street. Yeah, over the last few days we've been talking about it a lot. Sir Keir Starmer's written in the paper this morning, and he is warning that things are going to get worse before they get better. And he says that next week's return to Parliament will not be business as usual. OK, so Ellie Reeves, the Labour Party chair, she had this to say.
In his speech today, the Prime Minister is going to be level with the public and say, there isn't a short-term solution. It will take time.
Right, let's now go to Catherine Foster, our political correspondent, on this, and let's hear what she has to say. Catherine.
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Well, we heard Ellie Reeves there defending what Sir Keir Starmer is going to be saying that change is coming. Of course, they campaigned and won that election, didn't they, with that one word, change, promising change and promising to restore trust in politicians. So Sir Keir Starmer is going to stand in the Rose Garden and say that Parliament comes back next week, but they will be doing things differently. He's going to be talking to 50 members of the public that he met on the election campaign trail, as well as journalists, saying that it will not be business as usual. I think the issue of trust is tricky because, of course, they won this majority largely on people being very, very cross with the Conservatives. But already they are becoming embroiled in their own allegations of cronyism. People are pointed to the civil service with close links to Labour. A big Labour donor given a pass for Downing Street, although we're told that that was only temporary and no longer stand. So I think that's difficult, but I think the reason he's doing it in the Rose Garden is to try to remind us, as they will over and over again, of the legacy of the Conservatives, if you like. He's going to point out that, of course, Dominic Cummings at the height of lockdown went all the way to Durham and then had a press conference not apologising for that, despite the fact he'd had COVID at the time, reminding people of the Downing Street parties when we were all in lockdown, and saying that things are going to be difficult because they've inherited this really difficult legacy. And I think they're going to do what the Conservatives did successfully for many years. During the financial crisis, they came along and they said, look, Labour wrecked the economy. There was that infamous note, wasn't there, saying there's no money left, don't trust the Labour Party. Well, of course, Labour had the misfortune of being in power at the time of the financial crisis. The Conservatives would potentially say they had the misfortune of being in power at the time of COVID and at the time of Russia invading Ukraine and a cost of living crisis. But we are going to be reminded time and time again of how hard it is for Labour coming in, and the fact that, let's face it, it looks like taxes are going to be rising because public services are not working as they should. There is an economic black hole, if you like, although I think it is worth saying that the economy does seem to have turned a corner, and some of the credit for that should go to the outgoing Conservative government. But Labour, of course, will take any credit that comes its way for that.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? There will also be comparisons made with when Things Can Only Get Better was the soundtrack. I think it was Tony Blair came in, he was blaring that out, and now it's things have to get worse before they can get better. You know, it's quite an interesting tactic. He's asking for 10 years, not just the 5 years that he's just been handed. And I suspect he's not going to mention an awful lot about pensioners today either, is he?
No, I don't think so, because, of course, many people are absolutely livid about the Chancellor's decision to limit the winter fuel allowance to those basically in receipt of benefits. A lot of anger about that, and some people feeling that, you know, they've caved in to the unions. But I think, you know, the feeling is very different. In 1997, there was a feeling that change was coming, that it was a new era, there was optimism in the air. The economy was actually doing pretty well by that time. But again, people were very cross with the Conservatives. But I think there is a lack of faith in politicians, full stop, really. We saw very low turnouts, not much enthusiasm for this government, and some very, very difficult choices. So they've got their work cut out, and sure, they've got a big majority. Sure, they were talking about 10 years of national renewal. But as we've seen in Europe, most of Europe is moving to the right. They will have to deliver because they've got a big majority, but many of the seats that they've got with very, very small majorities.
It's interesting he's gathered to listen to his speech. It's apprentices, nurses, isn't it, and teachers and things. Will there be questions from the press afterwards, or is it just a straightforward speech and sort of meet and greet with the people there?
Yes, there will be press questions afterwards. We will have Chris Hope, our political editor, there. Let's hope that we get a question today. We don't always. So we will bring you that speech live, of course, and then all the analysis. 10 o'clock, we're expecting him to be speaking. And a nice weather, because it isn't always great. I was in the Rose Garden in July for lobby drinks. Sir Keir Starmer started to make a speech, and then the heavens opened. So the weather, at least today, looks like it will be good.
I don't know why you've said that now. Tempting fate like that, Catherine. You never know, do you, in a British summer? But thanks very much indeed. It's always the questions from the journalists after these speeches where it actually gets interesting, because they say everything they want to say, and then they get needled. And when the journalists gang up together and they sort of ask the same question in several different ways, that's when it's actually the best bit, I think, of these press events.
Now, all of this comes as the Prime Minister faces pressure over accusations of cronyism. The Conservatives are demanding an investigation into recent civil service appointments.
Yeah.
So earlier we spoke with the Shadow Secretary State of Science, Innovation and Technology, Andrew Griffin, and he was very interesting. But we're not going to see what he had to say. Anyway, the big news this morning is Oasis are back.
Yes, the band have announced a run of 14 shows starting in Cardiff and ending in Dublin. This is in July and August, summer 2025.
Right, Saturday this week. OK, tickets are going on sale from 8 o'clock. That's in Ireland, 9 o'clock in the UK. 2 nights in Cardiff, 4 nights at Heaton Park in Manchester, 4 nights at Wembley, 2 nights in Edinburgh, and then finally 2 nights in Dublin.
And I guarantee they're going to add more on. They're just going to see money signs, aren't they? Because you add in all the merchandise, all the re-release and the sales of the songs. They'll add in it. They'll squeeze in a few more, I reckon. But let's head to the northwest of England and speak to Sophie Reaper, who joins us, of course, from their hometown of Manchester. This will be a homecoming for them, won't it?
Absolutely, and I think now finally Oasis fans can stop crying their hearts out. Little by little, the band have given them everything they've ever dreamed of. Sorry about all the puns, but we're very excited here in Manchester now that the Gallagher brothers have announced that reunion 15 years after they first broke up. Now, we're here today outside the Boardwalk Club, which in 1991 is where Oasis first and together. Now, back then they weren't the top of the bill. In fact, they were right at the bottom, and they would have been playing to dozens of people. Fast forward 3 decades on and 15 years after they first broke up, and we now have a nationwide tour with 14 dates. What a change. And I think here in Manchester, where they're from, they're such a huge part of the Manchester music scene. In fact, I think one could even argue that they are Manchester's most famous export. People here are incredibly excited, but the question on everyone's lips is, are people going to be able to get tickets? We spoke to people this morning as they reacted to the news of an Oasis reunion. This is what they had to tell me.
Yeah, very excited. It's going to be interesting to see how long it lasts for, though, because you never know with those two.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It'd be great if you get tickets.
Big fans?
I'd say my brother definitely more so, but I'd try and get tickets to go, yeah. But...
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm really happy. I'm going to try for tickets on Saturday.
Are you a bit nervous? Because I think a lot of people are going to try.
Yeah, I'm nervous, but I've got a big group, so I'm hoping that I'll get them.
And that's where the nerves are, isn't it? Are people going to be able to get tickets? But I agree with you, Isabel. I do think there will be some more dates tacked on at the end. And another big question, of course, will they headline Glastonbury? That is obviously a massive question. Quite a change going from places like this, humble beginnings here at the Boardwalk in Manchester, going to huge venues that can hold hundreds of thousands over those 14 dates. But I think nationwide today, never mind cigarettes and alcohol, there's going to be quite a few champagne supernovas.
I love it. Squeeze them in as many as you can, Sophie. According to the PA Newswire, despite speculation for Glasgow 2025, the PA News Agency understands that they will not be headlining there. And I guess that doesn't work with the dates because Glastonbury is just before the tour begins. And then I've been told on Twitter, somebody very kindly messaged me to say that actually there is no Glastonbury in 2026. They're having a year off. So it looks like Glastonbury's not going to be happening for Oasis in the foreseeable future. But never say never, there's probably some sort of Oasis
but they could do Glastonbury
title that we can squeeze in there. Yeah, they'd be welcome anytime.
Wouldn't matter to them. Sophie, thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Do you know
Appreciate
what?
it.
I shouldn't be a curmudgeonly old woman, but when I did see that young girl talking about wanting to get tickets, I thought, what do you know about Oasis? She must have been in nappies when they were around. And they'll be the ones getting the tickets that I can't get my hands on, and I lived through it. So it's funny how all the youngsters want to go to these nostalgia concerts when they don't have the nostalgia that we have. Figure that one out.
You could think of nothing worse. Like all live gigs, they're all rubbish.
I did say to my brother, should we go? Because, you know, I grew up loving Oasis, and he said, I hate gigs. No. I was like, oh, God,
yeah,
all
I
miserable.
mean, you know, I need a nice armchair, a nice seat somewhere like the Royal Albert Hall. That'll be me, very nice. But all the standing at football grounds and whatever, and the sound is never any good.
The sound,
it's never any good. You can't hear the voice over the music or vice versa.
But the atmosphere, to see the boys back on stage,
but very good.
Amazing.
I'm sure very, very good if you like it.
If you like it. Right, time's 9:13. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom.
Residents of the East London block of flats engulfed by a nightmare fire say they've lost everything. Everyone's been accounted for, no injuries reported. That major incident declared yesterday following the fire in Dagenham. 100 people were evacuated, with 2 being taken to hospital.
The Notting Hill Carnival has wrapped up for another year with 5 people stabbed and 230 arrested on the closing day of the carnival. That comes after 3 were stabbed on Sunday, including a 32-year-old mother who's in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said 15 officers were assaulted, 90 arrests were made on the first day of the event.
From today, NHS 111 will now offer mental health support to adults and children in crisis. Local health systems previously had their own separate phone lines. They took about 200,000 calls a month, and it makes the NHS in England one of the first countries to offer such a support service for mental health issues. Though how do they deal with 200,000 inquiries a month? I reckon they don't. It's just an amazing situation. But 200,000 inquiries for mental and physical problems. Goodness me. So here we are on Tuesday, 3 days away from Friday, and it's time for the Great British Giveaway.
Yeah, make sure you put this in your diary because the lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. It is our biggest giveaway of the year, and here are all the details that you need to enter.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Right, stay tuned. Our way still to come. We have Andrew and Dawn coming in with lots more coming up at 9:30, but we'll be back in just a mo.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and it's inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme and that job lasted 6 months and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children. And last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time,
Yeah.
did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Right, Britain's newsroom coming up.
Never mind that. Right. We're talking about Lady Louise, who is Prince Edward's daughter, and this is should she join the armed forces or not? If you're going to do that, then all adolescents should do national service. Lady Louise should be an example. The royals very rarely actually serve on the front line anyway, which is true. That was the case for Prince William, wasn't it? They're just for show. Harry demonstrated that as well.
And lots to talk about Oasis. This from John. Even though I didn't like the Gallagher brothers and I worked in the catering, I witnessed when Liam sat his mum on his knee at their first album launch and said, "Get used to this, Mum, your life's going to change." So I hope they did look after her.
Well, sure they do.
Sweet.
Sure they do. Trevor says, what's the big deal about this one-hit wonder Beatles tribute band? Well, they weren't a one-hit wonder.
They weren't a one-hit wonder, I'm afraid.
No, not that.
Right, you might have heard them before you saw them. The wonderful Dawn.
You didn't hear me. I was thinking about
you're good.
Sorry, I was muttering.
That's all right. It's all right. I just have the director going, who can I hear?
It's my age, Isabel. Sorry, I was muttering to myself.
Well, that's because you're excited about your show. So what have you got for us?
I am. Well, welcome Andrew back as well.
Yes, well, we're going to be talking about this great story in the front of the Telegraph, how sex offenders and violent criminals are amongst thousands who get away with it if they just say sorry,
Just
effectively.
say sorry. But
amazing.
Put hurty words on Facebook and 15 months in jail. Do not POSGO. Do not collect £200. Bye.
Well, the truth is, we can't afford to put people in jail. The government doesn't want to put people in jail. So they all talk tough, but aren't tough with this all along. So what is the deterrent for not committing crime? I went on a jail tour last Friday in Belfast. And
open, as in a prison that's still in service,
No, Victorian jail. Victorian jail. Although, well, no, sorry, it was still in service in the 1980s, and it was the prison. My school was right beside it, whatever as well. You would not want to be locked up in a Victorian-type prison. No.
Bring them back.
Is it empty now?
Bring them back. It's a
Eamonn,
deterrent.
is it empty?
It is empty.
Should women have it open then?
They should.
This is the problem. We have got prisons sitting empty.
Right.
Yeah.
And the shoplifting as well. We're going to clamp down on shoplifters now. We're going to put the shoplifters in jail. Which jails are you going to put them in exactly? We don't have any, allegedly.
Exactly. We're also going to be Prime Minister in the Rose Garden. Interesting making that speech in the Rose Garden because, of course, in the Rose Garden, Downing Street had a party to mark all the very successful work that had been done on the general election campaign, organised by one Wahid Ali. Lord Ali, Labour's biggest Keir Starmer's biggest donor, who was given a Downing Street pass.
Look,
why?
What is your objection to Wahid Ali? I mean,
well, no, I like him very much. He's a very clever, successful businessman.
He's a paid advisor. He's there to raise money for Labour. If this was America, that would be very natural.
But it isn't America, and we don't have donors giving a pass, which gives them the run of Downing Street. If he wasn't a donor, he wouldn't have got the pass.
And it's the hypocrisy of the Conservatives doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Keir Starmer was going, you can't do that, that's cronyism. And then they do the same thing.
Within a few weeks being in attention.
And then, of course, the big, exciting news of the day that Andrew is so excited about.
Are you not?
No.
You must be.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I like music.
Together.
If they're in the back garden, pull the blind down.
I know. I had to rack my brains to think of a song that I like, and I came up with Don't Look Back in Anger. It's the only one I could really think of. No, I just don't
and
do
Wonderwall is
Champagne
they're not a one-hit wonder, I get that, and I'm very pleased with people, but I'm not interested in going to see them. Dawn's going to be in the queue for a ticket.
Well, we've got all the gory details, when they're playing, how much it's going to cost you to go and see them.
Apparently it's not about the money, apparently.
The 400 million, no, I wouldn't. Wouldn't worry me either.
No.
And we've got a good exclusive about someone who once worked with them back in the day and is going to reveal what they were like.
But look, but you know what they're going to be like? You're going to turn up at a concert where everybody's standing, they're all going to be drunk, sozzled out of their head. You won't be able to hear a word that comes from the stage. The music overrides the voice.
I think it'd be amazing.
And couldn't care less. Honestly.
No, I'm with you, Eamonn. I can't get excited.
Humbug were actually invented for you,
in praise of quality, everybody gets stoned and drunk, and they actually can't remember if they had a good time. You had a brilliant time.
No, I didn't. I was young in the 90s. I wasn't drinking my way through it. I remember all of it just for being great music.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people will be reminiscing.
And people say they might do Glastonbury. That's if they're still speaking to each other by Glastonbury next year, because they do spectacularly fall out, these brothers, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
And how?
Apparently they haven't met until the photo call 9 days ago.
Wow.
Interesting. Guys, thanks very much indeed. We look forward to all of that. Isabel and I will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early. Hope you can join us.
Yeah, have a great day. Here's the forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A bit of a north-south split across the UK today. Many northern areas seeing some rain, but largely dry and fine further south. So we can see this rainfall first thing this morning across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But for Northern Ireland, it will quickly clear here, so conditions improve as the day goes on. That rain just moving into Cumbria and Wales later on too. And that rain just quite heavy and persistent at times, so some fairly poor travelling conditions, especially across parts of southwestern Scotland. Ahead of it, dry and bright and increasingly warm, could see highs reaching around 25 or 26 degrees in the southeast. So moving into the evening, conditions improve for many parts of Scotland. Some late spells of sunshine around, maybe the odd shower. But for southwestern Scotland and Cumbria, that rain just persisting right throughout the evening. So again, a bit of a difficult commute home here. A few showers also for Northern Ireland, and that rain just beginning to fringe into southwestern England too as we end the day. But for the rest of England, it's a fine end with some late spells of sunshine. Into the evening, that weather front will just move a little bit further eastwards. It starts to weaken as it does so, but still some patchy rain on it as we move through the nighttime period. Either side of it, some clear skies, and for all of us, it's a fairly mild night. Towns and cities staying firmly above double figures. Into Wednesday morning, that area of cloud and patchy rain just really lingers across many central parts of the country. Behind it, another spell of rain moving in for Northern Ireland and Scotland. So after a little bit of a drier spell, turns wet, unfortunately, again here. But down towards the southeastern parts of England, remaining onto the dry and fine conditions, and increasingly warm. Could see highs reaching around 28 to 29 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A947 is closed each way between the Blair turnoff and the Ellen turnoff at Old Meldrum after an accident causing queues. In Fife, the A92 is blocked southbound by a fallen tree at Balfarg. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is partly blocked southbound where a vehicle caught fire just before junction 11 at Pownhill. Queues from junction 10 at Les Mahago. In the West Midlands, Handsworth New Road at Winston Green is closed for an investigation. In Suffolk, the A14 is blocked each way. There are animals